Chapter 937. The people from the Taiyu dynasty didn't say anything else and left quickly. No matter how one looked at them, they looked rather pathetic. Chu Luiyue only chuckled when the carriages had completely disappeared. She retracted her gaze and looked at the two guards. "This way please." The two guards each took a step back and invited them in respectfully. Chu Luiyue's eyes darkened. She didn't know what that Jun Zhuqing was thinking. He purposely left the best courtyard for her. On the surface, it looked like he was taking care of her, but he was actually digging a hole for her. Today's incident would definitely spread quickly. It wasn't just the Taiyu dynasty. The other two dynasties would definitely be unhappy with them if they heard the news. The weakest person occupied the best spot. This kind of thing would cause disputes no matter where it was. Moreover, this was related to the reputation of each dynasty. Who knew what kind of trouble it would cause in the future? He was purposely pushing her in front of everyone. However, Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. Since the other party was so blatantly provoking, she would just accept it. She took a step forward and stepped through the door. "Luyu, do you know that Prince Baiming? Why is he doing this?" After entering the courtyard, Mu Hongyu couldn't help but move closer and ask softly when she saw the magnificent surroundings. Chu Luiyue shook her head. "I don't know him. I've never seen him before." "Then what's his reason for doing this?" Mu Hongyu looked around and felt a little worried. "This place is great, but wouldn't we become targets by doing this publicly?" Chu Luiyue smiled. Even someone as straightforward as Mu Hongyu could see the other party's intention. It was obvious how straightforward his thoughts were. It's a waste not to take benefits that are delivered to our doorstep. Chu Luiyue raised her hand and pointed as she walked. "A few Dark North emperors have lived here before. It's a place where the dragon qi gathers. For them to like it so much, it's enough to prove that this place isn't ordinary. Just the fact that there was a level 9 Xian formation in this courtyard was already a huge gain. If you cultivate here, your cultivation speed will increase by quite a bit." "Exactly. Others have already bullied us. Could it be that we still have to swallow this humiliation?" "You is right, we are definitely staying here." Elder Su Jin's eyes lit up. As he spoke, he quickly walked inside. "I'll go take a look at this Xian formation first. You, remember to draw those Xian formations for me later." Just as he finished speaking, the figure had already disappeared. Xiaoran wanted to call out to her, but she hesitated and glanced at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue held back his laughter. Once Master Su Jin started looking at the profound formation, she became intoxicated and couldn't care about anything else. "Elder Xiaoran, please take care of her." A trace of embarrassment flashed across Xiaoran's face, but she still looked at her gratefully and chased after her. Swish. Jian Fengqi waved his fan, looking confident and unrestrained. His pair of icy eyes were filled with curiosity and gossip as he looked at Chu Luiyue. I say, you really don't have any relationship with this Jun Zhuqing?" Chu Luiyue glanced at him coldly. "I can let you have some relationship with him." Jian Fengqi felt a chill run down his spine, and he immediately retreated tactfully. Haha. This young master was just joking. Joking. Actually, Jinghong asked this young master to ask. Yuan Jinghong? Just as he was about to argue, Jian Fengqi covered his mouth. "Let's go. Let's cultivate. After this, we will have to compete with the geniuses from the other empires. It won't be good if we lose and embarrass ourselves." After speaking, she pulled Yuan Jinghong and quickly left. "Your Majesty, I will also take my leave first," Wu Ming said respectfully. Although he was not the weakest among the people who came with him, he could vaguely sense that these people were extremely talented. After only staying with them for a few days, he could sense that the aura of these people had improved significantly. This made him nervous, and he secretly made up his mind to cultivate more here. Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded. Wu Ming was the eldest disciple of the Master of Destiny Mansion. He was talented, and more importantly, he was down to earth and serious. This was also one of the reasons why she brought him along. Judging from his behavior, he clearly felt a sense of crisis and planned to cultivate and improve his strength. Of course, this was what she wanted to see. Now that he could stay here, it would be more beneficial for his cultivation. He might even be able to gain the upper hand in the upcoming competition. Wu Ming responded and left. Mu Hongyu then followed Jian Fengqi and the others, intending to learn from each other. Recently, she had learned some new moves from her master, and she was itching for a fight. After the few people left, Elder Chen Ku asked hesitantly. Your Majesty, are you really not worried? Although there are benefits to living here, but... He always felt that this trip seemed to be a little unsettling. It was as if someone had already arranged everything. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly, and there was a hint of slyness at the corner of her eyes, but there was a cold glint in the bottom of her eyes. What is there to worry about? I dare to come to Lin Province, so I dare to stay in this side courtyard. She lifted her feet and walked forward, her shoulders straight, and her aura awe-inspiring. I don't care what kind of demons and ghosts they are, I can suppress them. The benefits of living here, I will definitely take them. Beiming Royal Palace. Hunting ground. Ordinary royal palaces did not have hunting grounds, and most of them were set up outside the palace. But in the Beiming Royal Palace, there was a huge hunting ground in the palace. This hunting ground occupied an area of the aurora, and the edges were high fences made of refined iron. Each of them was as thick as an adult's thigh, and they were arranged neatly. There were also barbs on them, and if one was not careful, a large piece of flesh would be hooked off. If one looked carefully, one could see spots of blood on the fences. Some had been there for a long time and had already dried up. Some seemed to have just been left behind, and it was extremely red. The entire hunting ground was emitting a strong smell of blood. In addition, there was a barrier above the hunting ground that completely enveloped it. Not a single bird or beast could break free from it. At this moment, there was a person lying in the middle of the hunting ground. Blood was flowing from his neck, and it flowed all over the ground. He lay there motionless, and he seemed to be on the verge of death. If not for the weak rise and fall of his chest, one would think that he was already dead. But in fact, he was in a state worse than death. Because a black and white bird had used its claws to tear open his chest and was devouring his heart. Beside him, several magical beasts formed a circle and were staring at this scene greedily. But even though they were drooling, they did not dare to take a step forward. Because there was a man standing outside the fences. Your Highness, the people from the Tianling dynasty have already stayed in that side courtyard. A guard quickly went forward, knelt on one knee, and reported respectfully. Wonderful book house. Chapter 938. Is she satisfied? Jun Zhuqing stood with his hands behind his back. There seemed to be a lazy smile in his voice. She should be satisfied. The guard said hesitantly. Jun Zhuqing turned his head slightly, revealing a perfect side profile that seemed to have been carved by a knife. His sword-like eyebrows were slanted to his temples, his nose was high, and his upper lip was slightly curled into a seductive arc. It added a touch of devilish charm. Vaguely, there seemed to be a touch of devilish red in his eyes, which were half covered by his long eyelashes. Even though only half of his face was visible, it was not hard to imagine how devilish his face was. This low voice dragged out the last syllable, and there was a touch of danger in it. The guard immediately lowered his head and hurriedly explained. It's the people from the Taiyu dynasty. There was a misunderstanding with them. After that, he recounted everything that had happened earlier from the beginning to the end. Jun Zhuqing was silent for a moment after he finished listening. Then, he chuckled. I didn't expect Tan Taichen to be so impatient. I really overestimated him. Your Highness is the mastermind. Everything is under your control, the guard said hurriedly. Then, do you want me to send someone? No need. Jun Zhuqing raised his hand and stopped the guard. He seemed to have thought of something, and the smile on his face deepened. Her temper really hasn't changed at all, the guard was shocked. He was the crown prince's confidant. He could more or less figure out the Crown Prince's temper and thoughts. But this time, he could not guess the Crown Prince's plan at all. The Crown Prince seemed to have a special relationship with the newly ascended Shangguanyu of the Tianling dynasty. If he was good to her, he would let her live in that courtyard so openly. If he was not good to her. When he mentioned that person, his tone was a little more interested. Who else could receive such treatment from the Crown Prince in the past? He could not figure it out and did not dare to think too much about it. He could only do whatever the Crown Prince asked him to do. However, one thing was for sure. Shangguanyu wasn't someone who could be easily provoked. Let's go. Just wait and see. Jun Zhuqing said lazily. Yes. The guard quickly retreated. Jun Zhuqing looked up. In the hunting ground, the man's heart was almost completely devoured, and he was completely silent. The black and white bird suddenly stretched its neck and screeched. A rank 7 martial artist's 5 internal organs were connected, and the heart was the place that accumulated the most power. After devouring the heart, its aura naturally grew stronger as well. Jun Zhuqing's voice was beautiful, as if it was soaked in alcohol. All right, let's go. With that, the bird flapped its wings and flew away. In an instant, the surrounding magical beasts that had been waiting for a long time all pounced forward. Blood splattered everywhere. Not long after, they began to fight among themselves. The bird stood at the top of a fence and looked at the scene with a fierce look in its eyes. It was high up in the air. The scene was extremely bloody and brutal, but Jun Zhuqing seemed to be used to it. He gently touched the corner of his eyes, as if he was satisfied and satisfied. Then, he turned around and left. Yin Hao led the people from the Taiyu dynasty to the villa on the street next door. He was trembling with fear and did not dare to speak too much. When they reached the entrance, he braced himself and asked Tan Taichen and the rest to come down. Your Majesty, we are here. Tan Taichen and the rest got down from the carriage and quickly looked around. Their faces became gloomier. With just one look, they could tell that this villa was obviously a few levels lower than the previous one, regardless of whether it was in terms of scale or other aspects. What kind of lousy place is this? Tantai Ruoli could not help but curse. They were from the Taiyu dynasty. Even if they were not as noble as the Baiming dynasty, it was too degrading to live in such a place. He's looking down on us. If everyone lived in such a place, it would be fine. However, the people from the Tianling dynasty lived in a much better place than them. How could they be calm with such a difference in treatment? Yin Hao's head was covered in cold sweat. Princess Tantai, this villa was personally arranged by the Crown Prince. It is also the Baiming dynasty's villa. How can it be a lousy place? Don't say such things again in the future. As he spoke, he could not help but say to Tan Taichen. Your Majesty, you should at least say something. If they kept talking like this, they would get into trouble sooner or later. Did they think that this was the territory of the Taiyu dynasty? Although Tan Taichen was also frustrated, he had been an emperor for many years. He knew what to say and what not to say. He gave Tantai Ruoli a warning look and said coldly. Ruoli, have you forgotten what father told you before? He told her to keep a low profile. She had to keep a low profile. If what she said just now reached Prince Baiming's ears, it would not do them any good. Tantai Ruoli reluctantly kept her mouth shut. The rest of the people also felt conflicted because of the series of events that happened. They all kept quiet. It was already embarrassing enough that things had turned out this way. If they continued to harp on it, wouldn't they become a laughing stock? Seeing that they had all quieted down, Yin Hao led them in. After settling them down, Yin Hao took his leave and went back to report. As soon as he left, Tantai Ruoli could not help but curse. This is so infuriating. So infuriating. Her eyes were burning with anger, and her face was red because of anger. Father. We can't just let this go. Tan Taichen sat in his chair with a solemn expression. Then what do you want? They've already made it clear that this was all arranged by Prince Dark North. Could it be that you're going to find trouble with him? Tantai Ruoli was speechless. Of course, she knew that he was someone she could not afford to offend. Now, more than half of the power in the Baiming dynasty was in his hands. It was not an exaggeration to say that he could cover the sky with one hand. Didn't they say that Prince Baiming has always been ruthless and decisive? Did he arrange this because the people of the Tianling dynasty had some connections with him? Otherwise, she really could not understand how the weakest Tianling had the right to enjoy the best treatment. Logically speaking, the Tianling dynasty did not even have the right to come to the opening of the ancient Phoenix Mountain. Even if they didn't have the right, they still came. Tan Taichen's expression was solemn. If that Sheng Wanyu is really acquainted with Prince Baiming, then this is really troublesome. The room fell into a dead silence. After a while, a young man's voice sounded. Your Majesty, let them be arrogant for now. When the ancient Phoenix Mountain opens, we will know whether they are strong or weak, right? They lived in the best place. If they ended up in the last place, wouldn't that be even more shameful and embarrassing? Tan Taichen's expression changed slightly. Tantai Ruoli's eyes lit up. Yes. Father, what Zifeng said makes sense. Let them be arrogant first. When the time comes, we will use our strength to give them a slap. Let's see if that Sheng Wanyu still has the face to be arrogant. Wonderful book room. Chapter 939. Night fell, and a few stars sprinkled down from the black night sky. It was silent both inside and outside the courtyard. Only the night breeze that passed through the hall brought a hint of coolness. Chu Luiyue was cultivating in her room. Her eyes were tightly shut, and she sat cross-legged with her aura lingering around her. Occasionally, scarlet and transparent flames could be seen darting out and dancing around her body. After a moment, she raised her right hand. Her fair and slender finger tapped lightly in the air. A streak of silver force surged out and quickly transformed into several streaks of light that intertwined to form a pattern. Then, she waved her left hand lightly, and several streaks of force also surged out. These silver streaks of light outlined the first strange pattern, which immediately connected with the previous one. If Elder Su Jin and the others were here, they would be able to see that this Xian formation was very similar to the level 9 Xian formation they saw at the border. Because this was what Chu Luiyue had copied based on its original appearance. To ordinary people who did not have the talent to become a Xian master, Xian formations were just a bunch of strange lines and patterns to them. No matter how they looked at it, it was very difficult to remember. Because Xian formations had their own rules, and it was not as simple as memorizing it in a book. The complexity of a level 9 Xian formation was even more unimaginable. Even a high-level Xian master would feel dizzy after looking at it for a while, and it was impossible to memorize it. However, Chu Luiyue was different. She had already cultivated to the level of a level 8 Xian master in her previous life. Although she had changed her physical body and her strength was limited, her cognitive ability was still at the level of a level 8 Xian master. In addition, she originally had astonishing talent in this area, so memorizing those level 9 Xian formations was not a difficult task. What she needed to do now was to simulate this Xian formation as much as possible. Time passed by bit by bit. Chu Luiyue traced it bit by bit according to the pattern that was engraved in her mind. The countless silver streaks of light in front of her also gradually outlined the rough outline of the Xian formation. The lustrous light reflected on her face, which was like porcelain and jade, clear and clean. Thousands of miles away, the clear and crystalline waves on the boundless azure water surface sparkled. Several islands floated above it, and the thick force condensed into a white mist that lingered around it. It was like a paradise. Above the void, a golden dot of light suddenly appeared. Following that, the golden light rapidly expanded, forming a golden halo. Space fluctuated and rippled. After that, a tall figure walked out from within. It was Rong Xiu. At this time, he was wearing a black brocade robe, and the aura around him was cold. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, the gentleness of the seventh prince had disappeared. What replaced it was an indifference and coldness that made one's heart tremble. The suppression on his body disappeared, and his aura instantly soared. At first glance, he was like a god of death that had fought his way out of hell. His blood and chi were awe-inspiring. Woo, the horn sounded. Welcome back, Your Highness. At this moment, countless people looked in the direction of Rong Xiu and knelt down in unison. Rong Xiu's figure moved, and he headed for the floating island in the middle. He walked across the water, but there was still a small distance between his feet and the surface of the water. With one hand behind his back, he seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll. However, in just a few steps, he had already walked a great distance. When he arrived in front of the island, he leaped and soared into the sky. Then, he floated back down. His tall figure was reflected on the black jade slab. Rong Xiu continued to walk forward. The soldiers in charge of guarding on both sides bowed respectfully. At the front was Rong Xiu's palace. This place was heavily guarded, and ordinary people could not get close at all. Usually, it was very quiet. But today, there seemed to be someone waiting outside the main hall. When he heard the commotion, he also knelt down in the direction of Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu took a look and narrowed his eyes. The person looked familiar, as if it was someone he knew. When he got closer, Rong Xiu confirmed his guess. As expected. This person was none other than 36 revered Elder Ming's only nephew, Ming Yao. His position in the clan was not low now. As an elder, he was second only to the clan leader. Usually, they would rarely appear here. Even if there was something, they would look for 36 revered Elder Ming. There was almost no one who looked for Rong Xiu directly like this. Rong Xiu stopped in his tracks when he was in front of Rong Xiu. Elder Ming Yao, why are you here today? Greetings, Your Highness Saint. Ming Yao quickly bowed. A guard at the side cupped his fists and reported with some difficulty, Elder Ming has been here for 3 days. Your Highness, Elder Ming Yao has been waiting here since 3 days ago. He said that he has something important to report to you personally. Rong Xiu looked up slightly. Where is 36 revered Elder Ming? Your Highness, 36 revered Elder Ming has been in seclusion for the past few days. He purposely picked a time when 36 revered Elder Ming was not around. Rong Xiu's thin lips curled up slightly. Elder Ming Yao, please get up. If there is anything, just say it. Ming Yao thanked him first before getting up. However, facing Rong Xiu alone like this, he couldn't help but feel nervous. He tried his best to pull out a smile. Your Highness, actually, Ming Yao is here to represent the wishes of many clans. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at him indifferently. Oh. Ming Yao swallowed his saliva with difficulty and braced himself to say, this. It has been a few years since you ascended to the position of the saint, but the position of the princess consort is still empty. Coincidentally, your birthday is coming soon. We were thinking. Why don't you take this opportunity to take a look? Digression, continued at 6 p.m. Pft, I accidentally posted the 3rd chapter at the front. Everyone, make do with it first. The editor is not working today so I can't edit it. I will edit it in 2 days. Ma'am mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 940. As soon as he said that, Ming Yao suddenly felt the surrounding air turn cold. It was bone-chilling. For a moment, his sharp sixth sense almost made his legs go soft, and he directly knelt down. But this kind of biting cold aura was fleeting, as if it had never appeared. Ming Yao gathered his courage and quickly looked up, only to see Rong Xiu's cold expression. His eyes were deep, and he couldn't tell what he was thinking. He hurriedly retracted his gaze and lowered his head, his heart on tenterhooks. Who didn't know that His Highness Holy Son didn't get close to women? Ever since he became the Holy Son, in these few years, who knew how many people had mentioned this matter? But every time, it was directly rejected by him. Until one time, an honorable elder really couldn't stand it anymore and secretly arranged for 2 women to serve him. Rong Xiu didn't fall for this trick, but he couldn't refuse this honorable elder's face, so he directly sent the two women to do chores. Originally, it was nothing much, but those two women couldn't even enter the main hall, so they were unwilling to accept it. They actually plotted together to drug Rongshio's tea, wanting to use this to curry favor with him. But these two people didn't expect that Rongshio himself was extremely skilled in medicine, and that cup of tea was smashed to pieces on the spot. And those two women were directly dragged out and beaten to death in front of everyone. The most important thing was that Rongshio even specially invited that honorable elder to personally come and take a look. That honorable elder knew that he was in the wrong, so he didn't dare to say anything after being tricked by Rongshio. After the matter was over, he directly went into seclusion. This incident spread like wildfire. Everyone knew that Rongshio was cruel and merciless, and he was not soft-hearted even when it came to women. Hence, they all gave up on such thoughts. After that, Rongshio was quiet for a long time. No matter how anxious the people below were, they didn't dare to do anything out of line. But as time passed, Rongshio had been the holy son for a few years, but he still hadn't chosen a princess consort, so everyone's thoughts finally became active again. The position of princess consort was a highly sought-after position. Who wouldn't want it for themselves? If a girl from any clan could marry Rongshio as his princess consort, the entire clan would ascend together with her. When the benefits of something were greater than what was expected, the courage and motivation people would have for it would be greater. Ming Yao dared to come this time because, on one hand, he had the support of 36 respected elder Ming. On the other hand, it was because this reason was too legitimate and could not be denied. In the past, Rongshio did not want to marry her. Perhaps it was because he had just taken the throne and his political power was not stable, so he did not want to act rashly. But now, he had almost secured his position. If he still insisted on not marrying, he would not be able to continue. It seems that Elder Ming Yao and the others are very concerned about Ai's marriage. After a short moment of silence, Rongshio spoke. Upon hearing this, Ming Yao was delighted. He wasn't angry, but he didn't reject it either. Was there a chance? He hurriedly bowed and said, "Your Highness, the Holy Sun, is the backbone of all the clans. Your princess consort position has been pending for a long time, so everyone is naturally very concerned about it. This time, Ming Yao came here not only for you, but also for all the clans." Upon hearing this, Rongshio seemed to be quite interested and asked, "Oh? So, it seems that Elder Ming Yao already has a plan?" Upon hearing this, Ming Yao was instantly encouraged and hurriedly said, "Your Highness, to be honest, although you have never taken the initiative to consider these matters, we have to consider for you. We have already chosen the most outstanding girls among the clans. As long as you nod your head and invite them to meet you at your birthday banquet, we will definitely be able to choose a girl that you are satisfied with." Rongshio didn't deny it and smiled. "How many clans are there? I didn't pay much attention to them before." Ming Yao said a string of names. Other than them, there were also a few other clans that had good relations with them. They were all involved in this matter. Rongshio listened patiently and suddenly asked, "It seems that you have been preparing for a long time. Why haven't I heard 36 respected elder Ming mention it?" Ming Yao suddenly felt guilty, and his eyes flickered as he laughed. This 36 respected elder Ming is usually elusive. How would we dare to bother him with these matters? In fact, when they came to meet 36 respected elder Ming previously, they had already mentioned this matter to him. However, they were directly rejected by 36 respected elder Ming and were warned not to even think about these matters. Rongshio was the Holy Sun, and he naturally had his own decisions on these matters. If anyone dared to interfere with his matters, they would be courting death. However, after Ming Yao and the rest returned, they still weren't willing to give up this opportunity after thinking about it. What if Rongshio picked a girl from their clan? The reason why their clan could reach their current status was all because of 36 respected elder Ming. However, he was old after all, and in most cases, he wouldn't speak up for their clan. Instead, he would try his best to avoid arousing suspicion. This made them faintly disappointed. They felt that 36 respected elder Ming was doing this purely to protect his position and win the Holy Sun's trust. Instead of continuing like this, they might as well give it their all. Therefore, they joined forces with others to complete this matter together. This time, they took action especially when 36 respected Elder Ming wasn't around. Rong Xiu nodded in understanding. I see, his thin lips curled up slightly. What a pity. 36 respected Elder Ming had racked his brains for many years to prevent his clan from causing trouble and protect them as much as possible. However, no matter how hard he tried, he still couldn't stop it. Once a person was greedy, they would easily lose their brains. Seeing Rong Xiu smile, Ming Yao didn't feel any danger at all. Instead, he was secretly happy, thinking that this was a sure thing. Since that's the case, why don't we invite the other clans to participate as well? Rong Xiu said indifferently. Okay. Wah. What? Ming Yao almost twisted his tongue. He looked at Rong Xiu in shock, almost suspecting that he had heard wrongly. Others. Other clans? There are still 2 months before Ai's birthday. At that time, all the clans will come to celebrate. Wouldn't it be more convenient to do it together? Looking at Rong Xiu's expression, he didn't seem to be joking. Ming Yao suddenly felt that things seemed to be developing in a direction that was out of his control. But this was something that the few clans had discussed and agreed upon. If everyone came to participate, then what advantage would they have? There were so many clans. Who knew who Rong Xiu would choose? One had to know that there were countless women who wanted to marry Rong Xiu. In the past, because he didn't have such thoughts, no one dared to say anything. However, once he said that he was going to choose a princess consort. Who knew how intense the competition would be? If he chose someone else in the end, this trip would be considered as a waste of time. Ming Yao wanted to object, but the person standing in front of him was the most honorable Holy Son. How could he dare to say no? In the end, he could only bite the bullet and agree. Everything will follow the Holy Son's orders. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 941. In the evening. Enchanting rushed back from outside and went straight to the main hall. When he entered the room, Enchanting saw Rong Xiu sitting leisurely by the window, playing chess. Enchanting immediately saluted. Master. Rong Xiu stared at the chessboard, as if thinking about the next move. He didn't even raise his head and said, yes. How's the investigation going? Replying to Master, this subordinate has already obtained a part of the evidence. The rest can be obtained immediately when the time is right. Rong Xiu nodded with satisfaction. I always trust you when you do things. All he had to do was wait. Yes. Enchanting got up and stood aside. He couldn't help but look at his master again. Thinking of the rumors he heard when he came back. His heart was like being scratched by a cat. But his master always had his own reasons for doing things. This time, it should be the same. What do you want to ask? Just say it. Rong Xiu said lightly. Enchanting hesitated for a moment and finally spoke. Master, there's a rumor outside that you're going to choose a princess at your birthday banquet. Is this true? Of course it's true. Rong Xiu smiled, and the corner of his lips raised into a meaningful arc. No matter how bold Ming Yao is, he wouldn't dare to spread rumors about I. What's more, he spread the news on purpose. Otherwise, he wouldn't fly so fast as if he had wings. Enchanting was puzzled. But madam, I also want to finalize this matter as soon as possible. Pa. Rong Xiu put down the chess piece in his hand. On the chessboard, the black and white chess pieces were clearly separated, like two dragons fighting each other. With this piece, the black dragon beheaded the white dragon instantly. Everything was settled cleanly. He leaned back with a smile on his face. I have been alone all year round, and it's indeed very lonely. It's better to give the princess position to her as soon as possible. This way, she would be able to come to his side sooner and stand side by side with him openly. It was to prevent some people from thinking about it for no reason. Baiming Empire, Lin Province. After a night of hard work, Chu Luyue finally stopped what she was doing when the first ray of light shone in through the window. There was a huge silver barrier floating in front of her. Upon closer inspection, this barrier was formed by countless silver streams of light. It was incomparably complex, but it was also shockingly beautiful. This was clearly a replica of the Dark North Dynasty's border barrier. Even the various patterns on the Xian formations were clearly visible. She actually managed to make a complete copy of it. Chu Liyue's face was somewhat pale, but her starry eyes were incomparably bright, faintly containing some unconcealable excitement. This was not the first time she had tried to simulate a level 9 profound formation. Back then, she had long broken through to level 8 mystic cultivation and stayed in this realm for a very long time. Although she hadn't had the time to advance to the next level, she had already delved into quite a few level 9 mystic formations. This had also laid down a solid foundation for her to be who she was today. However, this was the first time she had successfully constructed a connected level 9 mystic formation. Knock knock. The sound of knocking came from outside. Your Majesty, we should set off for the palace. This was Wen Fan's voice. Chu Luyue replied. Got it. With that, she waved her sleeves. The simulated barrier in front of her instantly dissipated, transforming into streaks of silver light and quickly disappearing. Chu Luyue got up, washed up simply, changed her clothes, and went out. Seeing Chu Luyue come out, Wen Fan quickly bowed. With a hurried glance, he realized that Chu Luyue seemed to be in good spirits, her eyes as bright as stars. Yesterday's incident didn't seem to have affected her at all. Moreover, the aura on her body seemed to have vaguely become stronger. Wen Fan was secretly shocked. He had long heard that this person had a rare Tianjing Yuan meridian and was a rare genius. Unfortunately, she was harmed by someone later on, and it wasn't easy for her to come back. He originally thought that she would be much weaker than before, but now, it seemed like that wasn't the case at all. Wen Fan suppressed his thoughts and respectfully invited Chu Luyue out. Elder Chen Ku and the others also received the news and came out one after another. The convoy from yesterday was already waiting outside the door. The group of people got on the vehicles one after another and headed towards the palace. Unexpectedly, after walking out of the street and turning a corner, they bumped into the people from Taiyu Dynasty. Wen Fan was at the front of the convoy and saw Yin Hao at first glance. At the same time, Yin Hao looked over. He recalled yesterday's incident and immediately became angry, even his face became gloomier. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. He spat on the ground. Our convoy is in front, so we should go first. Wen Fan, why don't you guys get out of the way? After years of being bullied, Wen Fan subconsciously wanted to dodge when he saw Yin Hao getting angry. However, just as he moved, he heard a chuckle coming from the carriage behind him. Wen Fan's movement stopped. Yesterday, Shangguan had told him not to compromise. She was always there for him. This gave Wen Fan a little more confidence in himself. He immediately straightened his chest, lifted his chin slightly, and stared straight at Yin Hao. I'm sorry, our street is closer to the palace, so we walked in front of you as soon as we came out. Although your convoy is in front, we're all going to enter the palace, so what's the point of being in front? If we get out of the way now, we'll only add to the trouble. He raised the long whip in his hand. Smack! The long whip fell, and the sound of it breaking through the air was heard. You guys should just follow behind. Giddy up. Digression. After dinner, I'll update a little later. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 942. Wen Fan led the carriages away, leaving a trail of dust behind him. Cough, cough, Yin Hao coughed violently. His face was red, and he could not help cursing. What the hell? Does he really think he has a powerful backer? In the past, Wen Fan was weak and timid. He was like a little chick in front of him. If he asked him to go west, he would never dare to go east. But now, he had only been with the Tianling dynasty for a day, and he had become so arrogant. He really thought he was a big shot. The crown prince had arranged that villa for them, but that did not necessarily prove anything. The Tianling dynasty. How impressive. Tan Taichen lifted the curtain and looked at the carriages disappearing in the distance. He was expressionless. Yin Hao was afraid that he would be angry, so he quickly said, "Your Majesty, please don't take it to heart. They can be proud now, but they can't be proud forever. Only those with real strength can have the last laugh, don't you think so? If it was the Tianling dynasty of the past, they might have a chance. But now, after going through so much turmoil and exhausting so much of their vitality, it was obvious that they would be at the bottom this time. At that time, they would not have the face to be so arrogant." Tan Taichen put down the curtain and said coldly, "Let's go." The Beiming Imperial Palace occupied a large area. It was magnificent and magnificent. It was said that the Beiming dynasty had renovated the Imperial Palace to celebrate after the Taizu successfully entered the Divine Realm. In the following 1,000 years, the Beiming dynasty had been protected by the Taizu, and there had been no trouble. The country was rich and the people were strong. This made their national treasury full. Every 100 years, they could withdraw a portion of the money from the national treasury to maintain the imperial palace. In addition, in Linzhou City, everything related to the imperial family would receive special care. Therefore, no matter how one looked at it, Linzhou City was stronger than West Hill. Chu Luiyue sat in the carriage, resting with his eyes closed. At first, there were some noises coming from outside, but it gradually quieted down. However, the surrounding atmosphere seemed to be a lot colder. Then, the carriage stopped. Chu Luiyue opened his eyes. "We're here." Wen Fan stepped forward and handed over the invitation card that he had prepared. The Tianling dynasty? The soldier in charge of guarding the gate took the invitation card and looked at it carefully. He was shocked. The fight between the Tianling dynasty and the Taiyu dynasty for the courtyard had spread like wildfire. Many people knew that Crown Prince Beiming seemed to value the people from the Tianling dynasty a lot. Therefore, even these soldiers became nervous and didn't dare to slack off. No carriages or horses are allowed to enter the palace. "Everyone, please get off the carriage and move forward." Chu Luiyue lifted the curtain and jumped down from the horse carriage. She looked up slightly and took a look. Was. Chu Luiyue's heart trembled slightly. This time, she was going to take a good look at what tricks these people were trying to play. Heavenly Dragon Palace, Imperial Palace. In the center of the hall, there was a purple gold chair placed at the head of the table. That was obviously the seat of Jun Qiji, the Emperor of the North Underworld. On the lower left, there was a slightly smaller purple gold chair. Without a doubt, that was the seat of Prince Beiming, Jun Zhuqing. Generally speaking, only the emperor had the right to sit on the purple gold chair. Jun Zhuqing was only the crown prince, but he was almost on the same level as his father. It was clear how high his status was in the North Underworld. Below it, there were 2 rows of seats on the left and right. Looking carefully, each side was divided into 2 sections. Apart from the North Underworld dynasty, there were 4 dynasties that came this time. Now, the seats on the left and right of the 4 sections were occupied. They were the Xian dynasty and the East Kam dynasty that came one after another. Jun Qiji and Jun Zhuqing had not arrived yet. Apart from the 2 dynasties, there were only a few servants in the palace. The atmosphere was more relaxed. "Brother Ning, have you heard of something new yesterday?" The Xian dynasty's emperor, Gongsun Shao, held a cup of wine and asked. Ning Yuan raised his eyes slightly. His expression did not change. "Brother Gongsun, are you talking about the matter of the courtyard?" "Looks like Brother Ning has heard about it." Gongsun Shao laughed. "We went early yesterday. I didn't expect to miss such a wonderful show." "What a pity." "There's nothing to pity. It's just a place to stay." Ning Yuan did not seem to care about this matter. Gongsun Shao sneered at the old fox in his heart. His acting skills were still the same as before. But he was not in the mood to care about this with Ning Yuan. Now, what he cared about most was the Tianling dynasty. Brother Ning, you're wrong. This place was arranged by the crown prince himself. How can he not see it? If Jun Zhiqing wanted, he could have let them stay in the same place. But he did not. Wasn't he deliberately looking for trouble? More importantly, he was looking for trouble with the Tianling dynasty. I wonder if Brother Ning knows anything about the Tianling dynasty? Ning Yuan paused. My Eastcom dynasty is very far away from the Tianling dynasty. Naturally, I don't know much. Gongsun Shao smiled and stroked his beard. Forget about the others, but Brother Ning should have heard of the new Tianling emperor who is coming today, right? Some time ago, those things had caused a huge commotion. It was hard for them not to know. Brother Ning, aren't you curious about this person at all? Ning Yuan's lips moved. Just as he was about to speak, he heard an announcement. The Tianling dynasty's emperor Yuanshi, Shanghai Yu has arrived. The entire hall instantly fell silent. Everyone turned their heads and looked outside the door. A group of people was walking toward them. The person in front was a woman who looked to be about 15 or 16 years old. She was slender and tall, dressed in red. From afar, she looked like a red cloud floating over. As she approached, the hall was suddenly filled with gasps of astonishment. Countless people's eyes flashed with amazement. Beautiful. This woman was incomparably beautiful and exuded a noble aura. There was only one word to describe it: beautiful. She just stood there, and everything around her seemed to be overshadowed. Many people were secretly shocked. They didn't expect the rumored Shengguan Yu to be so beautiful. The people sitting in this hall were the most distinguished people of each dynasty. What kind of beauty had they not seen before? However, the moment they saw Chu Luyue, many people's hearts skipped a beat, and their eyes were unconsciously attracted to her. Chu Luyue was already used to such gazes. When she reached the middle, she stopped in her tracks and smiled. I'm late. I wonder what everyone was talking about just now. Can you tell me so that we can have a good time together? Digression, that's all for today. Friends in the Typhone district, please be careful. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 943. The woman's voice was clear, like pearls falling on a jade plate, echoing clearly in the main hall. The main hall instantly became even quieter. Wasn't she the one they were talking about just now? However, they couldn't say that out loud. After all, Shengguan Yu was now the emperor of a dynasty. Even if she was slightly inferior to these people, her status was definitely on par with them. As soon as she spoke, everyone in the main hall suddenly had the illusion that they had been caught talking behind someone's back. After a short silence, Ning Yuan took the lead to speak to Chu Luyue. It's just a small matter. Don't mind it. Now that the Dark North Emperor and the Crown Prince haven't arrived yet, Emperor Yuanshi, please feel free to do as you please. Chu Luyue's lips curved slightly, and there was a hint of a smile. Thank you. Today, all of you can be considered my seniors. If you don't mind, you can just call me by my name. Although she looked young, her behavior was generous. She had the majesty of an emperor, and she didn't lose the etiquette of a senior or a junior. Ning Yuan had a good impression of her. He nodded and introduced himself. Dongning Dynasty, Ning Yuan. Chu Luyue nodded and turned to look to the other side. May I ask who this senior is? Gongsun Shao originally disdained the Tianling dynasty in his heart, but now that the other party had spoken so politely, he couldn't openly make things difficult for them. Xian Dynasty, Gongsun Shao. I've heard a lot about you two seniors. It's an honor to meet you today. If there's anything I don't understand in the future, I hope you can give me some pointers. Chu Luyue said some nice words with a smile, as if she really didn't hear what they had said in the main hall earlier. After that, Chu Luyue led her people to the seats next to Ning Yuan and the others. Countless gazes followed her. Seeing her leisurely appearance, many people's expressions became a little strange. This Shengguan Yu doesn't seem to be the same as the rumors, previously, he had thought that she was an arrogant and despotic little girl. But now, it seemed that she was not the case at all. There was nothing wrong with his words and actions. He was clearly very magnanimous and courteous. Gongsun Xiao and Ning Yuan looked at each other. When I heard the rumors yesterday, I thought that Sheng Guanyu was deliberately provoking the Taiyu dynasty because she had the support of Prince Baiming. However, looking at her, I didn't think that she would do such a thing. Gongsun Xiao pondered for a moment, then laughed and asked, "What do you think?" "We only heard that you were coming yesterday. We wanted to pay you a visit first, but the distance between our residences was a bit far, and it was too late, so we didn't go because we didn't want to disturb you. I wonder, did you guys have a good rest yesterday?" He was asking about the matter of the courtyard. In other words, they were testing the relationship between Chu Luiyue and Prince Baiming. If there really was something wrong, then they would have to be more cautious in the future. Chu Luiyue smiled non-committally. "Thank you for your concern, Senior Gongsun. Like all of you, after we arrived in Lin City, everything was arranged by the Crown Prince himself. Of course, everything is fine." She did not answer Gongsun Zhao's question directly. Instead, she flattered Prince Baiming indifferently. This was his territory, so it was not wrong to praise him. Would anyone dare to refute her words? As expected, when Gongsun Xiao heard this, a trace of disappointment flashed in his eyes, but he did not say anything. Ning Yuan did not say anything. It seemed that he was really not interested in this. Taiyu dynasty's Emperor Huairan, Tan Taichen, has arrived. Not long after, Tan Taichen and the others arrived one after another. Tan Taichen felt even more frustrated when he saw that the people from the other dynasties had arrived. He greeted them briefly and went to his seat. However, he could not sit still even after sitting down. Tan Taichen clearly felt that many people around him were looking at him. He did not need to look up to know what these people meant. They must have known about what happened yesterday. This made Tan Taichen feel even more embarrassed. He felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. However, they did not say anything, so he did not even have a chance to fight back. He could not help but feel even more aggrieved. Moreover, after staying in the main hall for a while, Tan Taichen noticed that Gongsun Xiao and Ning Yuan seemed to be more polite to Sheng Guanyu. Perhaps it was because of what happened yesterday that they suspected that the Tianling dynasty had something to do with Prince Baiming. Tan Taichen secretly clenched his fists. "I'll let her be proud for now. When I have the chance in the future, I'll expose her in public. I'll make her lose face." His Majesty has arrived, the Crown Prince has arrived, two announcements rang out consecutively from outside the door. The noisy main hall instantly quieted down. Everyone looked at the door in unison. They saw a bright yellow figure walking toward them. It was a middle-aged man with a tall and sturdy figure. He was awe-inspiring without being angry, and his aura was strong. It was the Dark North Emperor, Jun Qizhi. Half a step behind him was a young man. The man was wearing a bright blue brocade robe. The collar and cuffs of his robe were embroidered with a dragon pattern with golden thread. He had a jade belt around his waist and a golden crown on his head. He was as aloof as a tall mountain and as unrestrained as a misty mountain. A pair of sword-like eyebrows slanted to his temples. His nose was tall and straight, and his lips were slightly raised in a seductive arc. However, the thing that made people's hearts sway the most was his pair of unique eyes. He was born with a pair of red phoenix eyes that contained all the romantic affairs of the world. Although he was smiling, his eyes were as cold and indifferent as a 1,000-year-old lake. A faint red color could be seen in his eyes, like a faint blood red color. It was unforgettable. His eyes swept over the crowd. His eyes were relaxed, as if he had seen thousands of sails, but also as if he did not care about anything. When Chu Luiyue saw him, she was slightly stunned. She could not help but have a thought. This is Jun Zhouqing. What an arrogant man. Yes, arrogant. Even though he didn't say or do anything, Chu Luiyue instinctively felt that he was an extremely arrogant man with just one look. As if sensing her gaze, Jun Zhouqing's eyes turned slightly and he looked over as well. The two of them looked at each other. Chu Liuyue's heart trembled. This man was extremely powerful. Almost instinctively, her entire body instantly went on alert. Jun Zhuqing's lips suddenly curled up and he smiled. When he smiled, the ice in his eyes seemed to have broken. He was innocent and pure. However, under the contrast of the blood-red color in his eyes, there was a hint of cruelty and fierceness that seemed to be unaware of itself. Chu Liyue could feel that Jun Zhuqing did not have any ill intentions towards her. However, she did not know why the vigilance in her heart did not dissipate at all. Shengguanyu? Jun Zhuqing suddenly opened his mouth. His voice was low, like the fragrance of wine that permeated the air, intoxicating people. Long time no see. He said with a smile. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 944. This voice successfully diverted everyone's attention to Chu Liyue. Countless gazes instantly turned to Chu Liyue. Even Jun Qiji, who had just walked in, couldn't help but look over with a trace of surprise in his eyes. There was a moment of dead silence. Chu Liyue instantly tensed up and cursed Jun Zhuqing in her heart. Long time no see. Who have you not seen for a long time? Do I know you? How can you speak like that? However, she definitely couldn't say such words out loud. Chu Liyue smiled slightly. She was very dignified and gracious, polite and distant. Thank you for your concern, Your Highness. I'm doing very well. Thinking that her father was still in the other party's hands, Chu Liyue could only grit her teeth and play along with the other party's act. Jun Zhuqing raised his eyebrows slightly, as if he wasn't satisfied with her answer. Is that so? But I haven't been doing very well recently. When these words were said, the atmosphere became even more awkward. Many people's gazes went back and forth between Chu Liyue and Jun Zhuqing as they secretly pondered. This. Why did it sound like the relationship between the two of them was quite unusual? Could it be that the previous rumors were true? That Chu Liyue really had Jun Zhuqing as her backer? Chu Liyue's eyes flashed slightly, and she sneered in her heart. Was this Jun Zhuqing crazy? She didn't even know him. What did it have to do with her whether he was doing well? If he was really not doing well, then it was probably because he had done too many bad things. So you're Shengguanyu. Jun Qiji spoke amidst the awkward silence. He looked at Chu Liyue with a gentle gaze and a trace of curiosity. The 9 ministers mentioned you before. This time, it was also he who insisted on inviting the Tianling dynasty along. I hope that your people can also show off their skills during the opening of ancient Phoenix Mountain. Chu Liyue's eyelids twitched. Did Jun Zhuqing mention her to Jun Qiji? This seemed even stranger. She tugged at the corners of her mouth, revealing a perfect and polite smile. I hope I can count on your blessing. When the surrounding people heard this, they all revealed meaningful expressions. Everyone knew that Prince Baiming was decisive and ruthless. There weren't many who could receive such special treatment from him, right? Tan Taichen furrowed his brows. It was no wonder that the Tianling dynasty, which was originally not qualified, had also come to the ancient Phoenix Mountain this time. It turned out that there was really something fishy going on here. Looks like I'll have to see what the relationship between Chu Liyue and Jun Zhuqing is before I can decide if I can make a move. Jun Qiji and Jun Zhuqing quickly took their seats, and the atmosphere in the hall gradually calmed down. However, from time to time, there were still some eyes that kept looking at Chu Liyue. Obviously, Jun Zhuqing's few words just now had already made many guesses in everyone's hearts. Even the few people sitting behind Chu Liyue were confused and vaguely felt that something was wrong. Elder Chen Ku leaned closer and asked in a low voice. Your Majesty, didn't you say that you don't know Prince Baiming? But from the looks of it just now, it was clearly not him. Chu Liyue lowered her eyes. Just wait and see. Yes. Elder Chen Ku responded and did not continue to ask. Elder Su Jin and the others looked at him inquiringly. Elder Chen Ku shook his head silently, indicating that they should not be impatient. What she said before did not seem to be a lie. Moreover, for many years, the Tianling dynasty did not have much contact with the Baiming dynasty. Today's meeting was really a little strange, however, they believed that she was. Baiming welcomes all of you who have come from afar. Let me propose a toast to all of you. Jun Shiji wanted to propose a toast, so everyone raised their wine glasses. The hall was bustling with noise and excitement. Everyone looked happy and harmonious, as if the open and covert struggles from before had all disappeared. Jun Jiuqing leaned lazily on his chair, one hand supporting his cheek, and his eyes half raised, as if he was not very interested in this. The wine glass in front of him was still full. However, no one dared to persuade him to drink. Even Jun Shiji did not say anything, so how could anyone else have a say? However, they had heard some things about Jun Jiuqing and knew that he was not easy to serve, so they consciously avoided provoking him. Mu Hongyu leaned closer to Jian Fengqi and whispered. That Prince Baiming seems to be very powerful. Before Jian Fengqi noticed, Mu Hongyu suddenly moved closer, and the woman's warm and sweet scent instantly filled the air. He was slightly stunned and looked over, only to find that Mu Hongyu was talking to him with her side profile, but her gaze was still on Jun Jiuqing, as if she was full of curiosity. Because she was not looking over, she did not realize that she had almost bumped into Jian Fengqi's arms. There was only an inch of distance between the two of them. Jian Fengqi could even see the soft hair on her face. His heart suddenly beat faster, and even his ears and cheeks seemed to be a little hot. He knew that he should retreat, but for some reason, his body seemed to be fixed, and he could not move. His eardrums were vibrating, and it felt as if something was hammering on his heart. Don't you think so? Mu Hongyu did not hear his answer, so she turned her head. Their cheeks brushed against each other, and their breaths were close. Jian Fengqi's heart stopped for a moment. However, Mu Hongyu did not seem to notice anything. She consciously stepped back and looked at him strangely. What's wrong with you? Jian Fengqi came back to his senses and looked away. Nothing. He's Prince Baiming. Isn't it normal for him to be powerful? Mu Hongyu rested her chin on one hand and tapped it. You're right, but it still feels weird. He seems to know Lu Yu. Out of all the people she had met, Jian Fengqi was ranked first in terms of playfulness and willfulness. However, this Jun Jiuqing seemed to be even more so. However, the two of them were not the same. Jun Jiuqing seemed to be a little evil. Jian Fengqi saw that she was still thinking about Jun Jiuqing. His brows furrowed slightly, and he felt an inexplicable discomfort in his heart. If they were really friends, then what happened yesterday wouldn't have happened. He opened his bone fan and dissipated the heat on his face. Mu Hongyu nodded in agreement. That's true. After exchanging pleasantries for a while, Jun Jiuqing finally spoke. Imperial Father, since everyone is here, let's cut to the chase. Jun Shiji was not angry at being interrupted. He stroked his beard. All right. I'll leave it to you to explain to everyone what's going to happen next. The hall had already quieted down. Hearing this, everyone looked at Jun Jiuqing. Jun Jiuqing looked around, and his gaze lingered on the woman in red for a moment. Then, he straightened up with a smile on his face. I believe that all of you are already aware of the reason why I've invited all of you here. When ancient Phoenix Mountain opens, it will be difficult for my Baiming family to deal with it alone. Moreover, this is a rare opportunity for cultivators. Therefore, this time, we've decided that the people of the 5 great empires will enter ancient Phoenix Mountain together. Digression, there's something going on at home that may take some time to deal with. Continue reading at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 945. Hearing him mention the ancient Phoenix Mountain, everyone's spirits were lifted. Wasn't this the reason they had come this time? From this evening onwards, the barrier outside the ancient Phoenix Mountain will be affected by the force of heaven and earth, and the pressure will gradually fade. After a day and a night, the pressure will be reduced to the lowest point. And at that time, it will be the best time to enter. Jun Joching's words were concise and comprehensive. There is only one entrance to the ancient Phoenix Mountain, and at the same time, it is also the exit. In other words, you have to exit from where you entered. The reason is that this opening was created through the combined efforts of countless ancestors over 1,000 years. This time, we took advantage of the right time, place, and people to open it. Everyone nodded, expressing their understanding. After all, this was a barrier left behind by a powerhouse who had stepped into the deity realm. Normal cultivators naturally couldn't contend against it. Only by taking advantage of this opportunity and working together would they have a chance. It was no wonder that they were willing to invite people from other dynasties to share in such a great opportunity. This was really the only way. 1,000 years ago, the Taizu of the Northern Underworld dynasty cultivated in the ancient Phoenix Mountain. At the peak of the 9th level, he successfully broke through and advanced to the next level. Since then, this ancient Phoenix Mountain has been left behind. In these 1,000 years, the ancient Phoenix Mountain has been sealed and has never been opened. No one has entered. In the long years, the force within the ancient Phoenix Mountain has accumulated and nurtured countless precious heavenly treasures. When the power within the ancient Phoenix Mountain has reached its peak, it will choose to open automatically and release the energy within. Then, it will enter the next cycle. And this process is 3 essences as 1. At that time, the accumulated energy within the ancient Phoenix Mountain will surge out like a tidal wave. All the cultivators within will be able to use this opportunity to raise their cultivation. Those with great talent and strength may be able to break through consecutively. With every word Jun Joching said, the expressions of the people sitting below became more and more excited. In this world, the strong were respected. Who didn't want to become stronger? Such an opportunity, some people wouldn't encounter it even in several lifetimes. Moreover, the ancient Phoenix Mountain was worthy of being called a divine mountain. Who knew if they would find the method and power to break through the shackles of the peak of the 9th level? As long as he could get in, he would have profited. The Dark North Dynasty is generous enough to invite us to enter the ancient Phoenix Mountain together. Ning Yuan has nothing to thank you for. I can only ask the elders to do their best to assist us. Ning Yuan cupped his hands. As soon as he spoke, the others naturally expressed their gratitude one after another. Even though they knew that the Dark North Empire had invited them mainly for their own sake, it was undoubtedly a good thing for them. Why would they be so calculative? Jun Joching looked around and seemed to be quite satisfied with everyone's reaction. The corners of his mouth curled up into an evil smile. Everyone, there's no need to be so courteous. When the time comes, the ancient Phoenix Mountain will be opened by relying on everyone. As for how much of the heavenly fate one could obtain after entering, that would depend on one's own ability. Jun Joching leaned back with a faint smile on his face. How about this? There's something I forgot to mention just now. When the ancient Phoenix Mountain opened, only 5 people could enter every 4 hours. In other words, everyone will be divided into 4 batches. Now, why don't we first decide on the order of entering the ancient Phoenix Mountain? As soon as he finished speaking, the main hall instantly quietened down. Many people looked at each other. Previously, they thought that as long as the ancient Phoenix Mountain was opened, everyone could enter together. Who would have thought that there would be an order? Moreover, the interval was not short. It was a full 4 hours. This might not sound like much, but one had to know that time was extremely precious in the ancient Phoenix Mountain. The more time one could spend inside, the higher the possibility of increasing one's strength or finding opportunities. Who would be willing to fall behind others? Therefore, the order became extremely important. The Dark North Empire would definitely be the first to enter. The remaining 4 clans would have to follow their own order. For a moment, no one spoke. Chu Luo lowered his eyes and quietly looked at the wine cup in front of him. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. Jun Joching was indeed someone who wished for the world to be in chaos. He was the noble Prince Baiming. Logically speaking, it was not a problem for him to directly decide on the order. But he would not. He wanted the 4 clans to come to an agreement. On the surface, it looked like he wanted to be fair and impartial. In reality, he wanted to stir up trouble among these clans. Before they even entered the ancient Phoenix Mountain, there were already undercurrents surging. With such a commotion, it was inevitable that there would be some friction and disputes among the clans. This directly weakened the possibility of them joining forces. The Dark North Empire only needed to stay out of it and watch everything with a smile. Everyone present was smart. They all knew that the bird that stuck out would be shot. No one wanted to offend others and become a target. I have a suggestion. Tan Taichen suddenly spoke. Hearing this, everyone turned to look at him. Chu Luiyue looked up and saw Tan Taichen looking straight at her. Her heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, a strong premonition surged in her heart. As expected, she then heard Tan Taichen say, "The Tianling dynasty came from afar. It must be tough for them. Why don't we let them go first? What do you all think?" As soon as he finished speaking, the main hall became even quieter. Except for the host, the Dark North Empire, who didn't come from afar. Tan Taichen deliberately said this to emphasize that the Tianling dynasty was the only dynasty that didn't neighbor the Dark North Empire. He implied that they didn't have the right to come here. But not only did they come, but they also stayed in the best courtyard. This more or less made the others feel unbalanced. Didn't they say that they had something to do with Prince Baiming? Didn't they say that they had some background? If that was the case, then they might as well go first. Let everyone see if they had the ability and whether they were worthy. In the silence, Chu Luiyue chuckled and said, "I didn't expect Senior Tan Tai to take such good care of me. Logically speaking, I'm the lowest in seniority here. I should be last. But since Senior Tan Tai said so, if I refuse, wouldn't it be a disgrace to you?" Tan Taichen sneered in his heart, but didn't show it on his face. He said calmly, "You're still young and have just been promoted. It must be hard for you to bring them to the Dark North Empire. Let's make way for them. It's no big deal." Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded as if she didn't hear the sarcasm in Tan Tai's words. "Since you've said so, then I'll do as you say. But I don't know what the other seniors think." She looked at Ning Yuan and the others as she spoke. Gongsun Shao originally wanted to fight for the position, but he didn't expect that Tan Taichen would push Chu Luiyue and the others to the front. Moreover, he had already spoken to such an extent. If they refused, they would appear to be very petty. Gongsun Shao paused and said hesitantly, "They're just young girls. They are all young children. Wouldn't it be too dangerous for them to take the lead like this?" Tan Taichen laughed. "You don't have to worry about this. You don't know that when Sheng Guanyu arrived at the border of the Dark North Empire, she had already memorized all the level 9 Xian formations that built the barrier. Once you enter the ancient Phoenix Mountain, you'll be invincible as long as you use it a little." Digression: I was busy outside today. When I got home, I fainted and fell asleep. My mind was in a daze. The rest of the update is about 9:30. Sorry. The typhoon is so strong. Everyone, pay attention to your safety. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 946. Chu Luiyue shook her head. The emperors of the various empires will be waiting outside, and I am no exception. There were only a total of 5 people who could enter. She had brought 5 people with her from the beginning, which was just right. With Jian Fengqi and Little Zhou, there shouldn't be any problems. I will wait for you outside. Seeing that Chu Luiyue had made up her mind, Mu Hongyu knew that it was useless to persuade her, but she still felt a little regretful. But this is a rare opportunity. If she missed it, wouldn't it be a pity? Chu Luiyue's eyes curved. "Don't worry, I have my own plans." Hearing her words, Mu Hongyu could only nod her head. "Elders, please take your positions." Following an elder's command, the experts of the various empires moved out and stood in their positions according to the plan they had agreed on earlier. In front of this huge colorful barrier, the experts each took a corner, forming a huge pentagon. On the 5 points of the pentagon, the 5 powerhouses from each dynasty formed a small pentagon. Among these people, the weakest was a peak rank 8 expert. The strongest was the elder who had spoken just now, the Dark North Empire's great elder, the peak rank 9 expert, Hua Qian. It was said that he was only 1 step away from a higher realm, and he was undoubtedly a top expert. Many people secretly guessed that he would become the second Dark North Empire expert to enter the God realm. Naturally, the opening of the ancient Phoenix Mountain would be led by him. Rise! At Hua Qian's command, everyone moved together. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In an instant, forces of various colors flew out and intertwined in midair. Then, they gathered in the middle of the pentagon and formed a ball. As time passed, the ball of light gradually grew bigger. Below, the young geniuses of the various empires had already taken their positions and were prepared to enter according to the order. Standing at the front was the Dark North Empire that intended to be the first to enter. Jun Zhuqing was among them. Standing beside him were 3 young men and a woman. These people looked to be in their 20s, but the aura around them was not to be underestimated. At this moment, the few of them were gathered together and seemed to be discussing some arrangements after entering. Jun Zhuqing listened lazily, as if he didn't care at all. After listening for a while, he felt a little bored, so he turned to look at the Tianling dynasty. Then, he raised his eyebrows slightly. This is Jin Lingzi. Every pearl can sense each other. After you enter, you can use this to contact each other. Chu Luiyue took out a golden bracelet from his interspatial ring and tore it open with a little force. Then, he gave the beads on the bracelet to Jian Fengqi and the others. As for herself, she kept the biggest one, which was also the only one with patterns carved on it. If you encounter danger, you can crush them. Each of them contains an 8th level Xian formation that can help you block one attack. Hearing this, the few of them revealed a shocked expression. They did not expect that this round and smooth golden bead would actually have such power. Jian Fengqi weighed it in his hand and glanced at Chu Luiyue. If I remember correctly, this Jin Lingzi bracelet was broken back then, right? Chu Luiyue nodded and said casually, yes. That's right. That's why I fixed it again. Jian Fengqi was speechless. Forget I asked. How could I forget that this is a freak? Even if she had started all over again and didn't have the Tianjing Yuan Meridian, her talent was still unbelievably high. He thought that with this opportunity, he could still turn the tables. Now, it seemed like it would be quite difficult. Indeed, comparing oneself to others would only make one angry. Once the 8th level Xian formation is activated, its power will disappear. If you encounter danger again, the only way is to crush it quickly. Once this Jin Lingzi is crushed, the others who have Jin Lingzi will receive the news immediately, including me. Moreover, after this Jin Lingzi is crushed, it will emit a special smell that will stay on the person's body for 3 days. This way, the others can quickly find the person who is asking for help. Of course, the prerequisite is that the person asking for help must also ensure their own safety during this period. Wu Ming glanced at the colorful barrier and asked in a low voice, Your Majesty, the most important thing in this opening of the ancient Phoenix Mountain is the 3 essences as one. Everyone's focus should be on that. Even if there is competition between them, they won't go too far, right? After all, the emperors of the various dynasties are waiting outside. If there are really heavy casualties, how will they explain it after they come out? Stupid. Yuan Jinghong nudged him with her elbow and raised her chin. Wu Ming, you are so obsessed with cultivation that your brain isn't working. Do you really think that these people are so kind that they will let us snatch the benefits? It is because this 3 essences as one is too powerful and too tempting that it is the most dangerous. Look, who here isn't ready and eager to give it a try? If we don't make more preparations, we won't even know how we died. Wu Ming followed his gaze and found that it was indeed so. The young geniuses of the other dynasties seemed to have gathered together to discuss something. Most of them had solemn expressions, and the atmosphere was tense with a hint of danger. If that's the case, I was too naive. Wu Ming was a little embarrassed, but he still clenched his fists. "Don't worry, Your Highness. We will do our best." No matter what, they couldn't let His Highness lose face. Chu Luiyue smiled slightly and didn't care much about this. She only looked at the few of them and said seriously, "Those are secondary. Safety first." "Yes. It's a pity that Shangguanyu doesn't intend to go in." Tantai Ruoli had been paying attention to the situation at the Tianling dynasty's side from afar. When she saw Chu Luiyue patiently explaining something to the other 5 people, she couldn't help but feel disappointed. She had wanted to use this opportunity to teach her a lesson. She could flaunt her power outside because she was the empress, but inside the ancient Phoenix Mountain, it would be a real competition of strength. "She probably knows that she can't beat us, so she's purposely hiding?" Yuzefeng said disdainfully. "But don't worry, Ruoli. If we can't take care of her, we'll let the rest of them suffer a little. It'll be considered as payback." Tantai Ruoli snorted lightly. Of course. Out of all the candidates from the Tianling dynasty, those from the Tianling dynasty were the weakest in terms of overall ability. They could easily take care of them. The most powerful one among them seems to be Jian Fengqi, but I heard that he's a celestial physician. His combat strength should be average. As for the others, it was needless to say. Yuzefeng looked at Tantai Ruoli eagerly. "Ruoli, I'll avenge you when the time comes." Tantai Ruoli nodded. "We have to let Shangguanyu know who they can offend and who they can't." Just when everyone was ready, the last trace of the setting sun disappeared into the Black Mountain Range. Elder Hua Qian gave the order. Ancient Phoenix Mountain, open. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 947. Chu Luiyue's voice was cold and dignified. Every word she said echoed clearly in the hall. It was like a loud slap on Tantai Ruoli's face. Tantai Ruoli's face instantly turned red. She had never been humiliated like this in front of so many people. "Shangguanyu. You. I have reminded you before that my reign name is Yuan Shi." "Why? Princess Tantai, have you forgotten it so quickly?" Chu Luiyue interrupted Tantai Ruoli coldly. Her dignified manner was even stronger. She was born noble and had been in a high position all year round. Now that she had ascended the throne, the noble aura in her bones was even stronger. At this moment, she no longer restrained her aura. Her aura instantly formed an invisible mountain and pressed down on Tantai Ruoli's shoulders. Tantai Ruoli felt her shoulders sink and her face turn pale. "How dare you!" Tan Taichen saw that his precious daughter was being bullied. Anger rose from his heart. He gathered the force in his palm and slapped it out. The orange force turned into a huge palm print and went straight for Chu Luiyue. A strong wind suddenly blew in the hall. Chu Luiyue's black hair swayed and the corners of her clothes fluttered. She fixed her eyes on the palm print that was flying towards her and sat firmly in her seat. It seemed that she had no intention of fighting back. Moreover, there was no surprise or nervousness on her face. Elder Chen Ke's aura turned cold and he was about to make a move. Suddenly, a white light blade flew across the sky. Chi! The sound of something breaking rang out, and the white blade of light actually flew out from the huge orange palm print. Bang! The palm print collapsed and the force contained in it began to spread wildly in all directions. However, almost at the same time, a transparent enchantment appeared quickly and enveloped it completely. In the blink of an eye, the vigorous and violent force quickly dissipated. The hall regained its peace. Everything happened too quickly. The crowd did not even have time to see what had happened. It was already over. When all the fluctuations subsided, many people looked at the white light blade in a daze. They realized that it was a silver chopstick. Chi! That thing once again transformed into a streak of light and quickly flew back. A slightly hoarse voice rang out lazily. Tan Taichen, who gave you the guts to behave so atrociously here? Tan Taichen was shocked. He looked up and saw that Jun Jiuqing had sat up straight and was holding the silver chopstick in his hand. It was Jun Jiuqing who did it. Realizing this, Tan Taichen was both shocked and scared. He was shocked because he did not expect Jun Jiuqing to be so direct and not give him any face. What he was afraid of was that from that strike, Jun Jiuqing's strength was clearly above his. If Jun Jiuqing had exerted more strength just now, he was afraid that, for a moment, Tan Taichen's face turned red and white at the same time. At this moment, he could not tell if Jun Jiuqing had done it to protect the dignity of the Baiming kingdom or to help Shang Guanyu. If it was the former, he could just bow his head and admit his mistake. But if it was the latter, did it not mean that he had offended Jun Jiuqing? Your Highness, please forgive me. Just now, I saw my daughter being bullied. In a moment of impulse, I forgot that we were still in the main hall. Tan Taichen forced himself to speak, trying to defend himself. I don't care who bullied your daughter. But you can't do it here. Jun Jiuqing could not be bothered to listen to him and directly stopped him. Tan Taichen was extremely aggrieved. If he had known, he would not have made a move just now. Although Shang Guanyu had also exerted pressure, he did it quietly and did not attract the attention of others. His palm strike just now had directly given his opponent a weakness that could be used against him. Tantai Ruoli was also stunned by the scene in front of her. She had always been doted on, and her words had always been the law in the Taiyu dynasty. She had long been spoiled. Therefore, even when she came here, she could not restrain herself. It was only when she saw her father's move being easily defeated by Jun Jiuqing that she realized that the Baiming kingdom did indeed have the right to be arrogant. Chu Liuyue's lips curled into a smile. It seems like Senior Tantai and everyone from the Taiyu dynasty are a little angry. Why don't we wait until later to enter the ancient Phoenix Mountain? I'm afraid it's not very appropriate to go in with such anger and fury. Tan Taichen's heart tightened when he heard that. This Shang Guanyu is really cunning. Taking advantage of my words to take the first place, he actually wants Taiyu to be the last place? No, that makes sense. Ning Yuan, who had been watching from the sidelines, suddenly spoke in agreement. In that case, our East Calm will be the third place. On the other side, Gong Sun Zhao's mind raced when he saw this. Although he also wanted to be at the front, the situation was complicated now. It was better to not cause trouble. He only pondered for a moment before agreeing to it. Brother Ning, since you are following the Tianling, we will follow behind. Is that okay? Apart from the Taiyu dynasty, everyone else was fine with it. Tan Taichen was so aggrieved that his lungs were about to explode. It would have been fine if only Shang Guanyu said this, but Ning Yuan and Gong Sun Xiao, who followed closely behind, nodded in agreement. What else could he say? One had to know that among the dynasties present, Taiyu was only slightly stronger than the Tianling dynasty. How could he openly oppose the others? Chu Luiyue looked up slightly and glanced at Tan Taichen. Senior Tantai, what do you think? Tan Taichen swallowed the surging blood in his throat. If that's the case, then that's great. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 948. Chu Liuyue's eyes curved into crescents. That's good, everyone is happy. Tan Taichen felt as if his heart had been hammered again. His chest felt suffocated. Everyone is happy, who wants to be happy with you? He originally wanted to use this opportunity to embarrass Shang Guanyu in front of everyone, but he didn't expect to go for wool and come home shorn. Instead, he put himself in danger. They were the last to enter, and there was a gap of 16 hours between them and the first to enter. It was almost a day's time. By the time they entered, all the good things might have been taken away by the people in front of them. What was left for them was probably just some leftovers. But now, other than them, everyone else had expressed their agreement. What could they do? Tan Taichen took a deep breath and suppressed the anger and resentment in his heart with great difficulty. Father, are you all right? Tantai Ruoli asked worriedly. Tan Taichen shook his head. He wasn't injured, but he had completely lost his face. If it wasn't for waiting for the opening of ancient Phoenix Mountain, he definitely wouldn't continue to stay here. It's all my fault. If I hadn't been so impulsive, this wouldn't have happened. Tantai Ruoli's eyes were red, and she seemed to be blaming herself. Yuzafeng, who was sitting beside her, felt his heart ache. He couldn't help but persuade her gently, Ruoli, how can this be your fault? You didn't do anything wrong. The wrong thing is, that name rolled in his throat. Thinking of the situation just now, Yuzafeng swallowed those few words back. In short, this matter can't be blamed on you. Don't blame yourself too much. Tan Taichen sighed and patted her arm lightly. Zifeng is right. We have already formed a grudge with them. Even if you didn't say anything today, they wouldn't have treated us well. That Shangguan Yu was so arrogant and conceited. Tantai Ruoli choked for a moment. She quickly glanced at the opposite side, then quickly retracted her gaze and bit her lip. Father, that Shangguan Yu didn't dare to show it in front of everyone, which means that what she said is definitely false. She didn't even remember that level 9 Xian formation. Her voice was very low. At this time, the hall had regained its liveliness, so not many people heard her words. Shangguan Yu used his identity as an excuse to get angry. He must be trying to cover up the truth. Tan Taichen closed his eyes. Don't worry, Imperial Father will make you pay for this. The order to enter the ancient Phoenix Mountain had already been decided. Next, everyone decided on some specific details. It was mainly about how the experts of the various grand empires should work together to open the enchantment of the ancient Phoenix Mountain, as well as some things to pay attention to after entering. After they finished discussing, everyone set off for the ancient Phoenix Mountain. The ancient Phoenix Mountain was located behind Linzhou City. In other words, the huge Linzhou City was built right next to the ancient Phoenix Mountain. The mountain range rose and fell continuously. It was majestic and magnificent, and it could be said to be a natural defensive barrier. By the time they arrived at the foot of the ancient Phoenix Mountain, it was already close to evening. The setting sun slowly set. The afterglow of the sun shone, outlining the continuous lines of the ancient Phoenix Mountain. As the bright red sun was slowly swallowed by the black mountain range, the sky gradually darkened. The experts of the 5 grand empires were all ready. Chu Luiyue looked up. A brilliant enchantment enveloped the huge ancient Phoenix Mountain. It was majestic and awe-inspiring. She held her breath. This was the pressure of an expert who had stepped into the legendary realm. Mu Hongyu asked in a low voice, Luyu, are you really not going in with us? Digression, today's update is unstable, so I'll make up for it with a piece of supper. Good night, everyone. Mobile users, please browse and read. Chapter 949. His voice was full of energy. Everyone in the main hall heard it clearly. After a momentary daze, the sound of people sucking in cold air could be heard. What did Tan Taichen say? Shangguan Yu had already memorized all the level 9 profound formations at the border of the Dark North Kingdom. How could this be possible? Oh my god, did I hear it wrong? Shangguan Yu. Level 9 profound formations, must be a joke, right? I heard that Shangguan Yu had amazing talent in the past. She was indeed a level 8 mystic master. The few level 9 profound formations at the border of the Dark North Kingdom were jointly created by several level 9 mystic masters of the Dark North Kingdom. They are extremely complicated. Not to mention Shangguan Yu, even if it was other level 9 mystic masters, they would need to spend a month or so to completely memorize it. How could she have done it? Everyone was talking about it. Gong Sun Shao also felt that it was extremely absurd. He immediately laughed. Brother Tantai, what are you talking about? Tantai Chen's expression was as usual. Brother Gong Sun, you and I have known each other for many years. You should know me well enough. Would I joke about this kind of thing? Shangguan Yu said it herself at that time. The smile on Gong Sun Zhao's face suddenly froze. He looked at Chu Luiyue in disbelief. Tan Tai Chen poured himself a glass of wine and said in a seemingly unintentional manner. At that time, we arrived at the border almost at the same time as the people of the Tianling dynasty. As soon as we got out of the teleportation formation, we heard them talking about this. As he spoke, he looked up at Chu Luyue. Although there was a smile on his face, his eyes were full of coldness. If I remember correctly, Shangguanyu, at that time, you seem to have said that it would take 15 minutes? Since she dared to ask such a question to his face, it was most likely true. The noisy discussion disappeared in an instant. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed on Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue tilted her head and smiled honestly. Yes, what's wrong? What's wrong, what's wrong? You said it yourself. Who in this world could do such a thing? And she actually admitted it so honestly. Did she think that by boasting about everything, she could make herself look more powerful? Those present were all the top experts and geniuses of the various dynasties. But none of them dared to say such a thing in public. Looking at her face, it seemed that she didn't care. Did she even know what she was talking about? Chu Liyue's answer was so frank that everyone couldn't react for a moment. Even Tan Tai Chen, who wanted to see her make a fool of herself in public, had a stunned expression on his face. He originally thought that Chu Liyue would deny it, but who knew? It seems that Emperor Yuan Shi has a well-thought-out plan. He has already comprehended all the 9th grade profound formations and memorized them by heart. Tan Tai Ruoli, who was sitting at the back, finally couldn't help but speak up with a mocking expression. When she said Emperor Yuan Shi, she deliberately emphasized the word Emperor Yuan Shi. Chu Luyue glanced at her indifferently with a faint smile. This empress merely memorized all the profound formations. He didn't know it by heart, and he didn't dare to say that he had completely comprehended it. Not to mention other things, it is definitely not something that can be comprehended in a day or two to comprehend such a top-notch profound formation. However, Tan Tai Grand Princess is not a mystic teacher, so it's normal that you don't understand these things. As Chu Luyue spoke, she leisurely took a sip of wine. Tan Tai Ruoli choked. You! She was mocking her for not being a mystic teacher. Was she so great just because she was a third cultivator? The current Shangguanyu was no longer at the primordial heavenly meridians, and her strength seemed to be only at the 6th rank. Even if she could continue her cultivation as a mystic teacher and a heavenly doctor, her realm and strength were not enough, so what was there to be arrogant about? Did she really think that she was still that rare genius from before? This princess is indeed not a mystic teacher, and I'm not clear about the intricacies of this place. I'm not as good as Emperor Yuan Shi, but with just a few glances, I was able to memorize the 9th level mystic formation. With this kind of talent, I'm afraid there's no one who can match up to me in all the empires, right? Tan Tai Ruoli sneered in a rather eccentric manner. Ugh, Chu Luyue seemed to have a headache as she rubbed her temples. Sometimes, people who are too outstanding will indeed be a little troublesome. Sigh, actually sometimes, this empress is quite envious of people like Tan Tai Grand Princess. She doesn't have as many troubles as this empress. Tan Tai Ruoli, everyone, they had seen people who could brag, but they had never seen one who could brag like this. Tan Tai Ruoli was so angry that she laughed. So you're saying that you've really memorized all of those 9th grade profound formations? Chu Luyue blinked her eyes. Why, can't I? As she spoke, she turned her head and looked at Jun Qiji, who was sitting in the seat of honor. Your Majesty, this empress didn't take too many glances at that grade 9 profound formation at your border. You won't mind, right? What else could Jun Qiji say? That was a profound formation that was specially used to construct boundaries. Anyone who entered or exited the dark north border would see it. How could they not let others see it? Not to mention taking a few glances, even if someone set up camp outside and looked at it for a year or so, there was no need for them to stop them. Of course not. Jun Qiji coughed and turned his gaze to look at Jun Zhuqing, who was beside him. Previously, Jun Zhuqing had only mentioned this Shangguanyu once or twice. From their conversation, he seemed to admire this woman. Otherwise, he wouldn't have invited Tianling dynasty this time. But he didn't say that this woman was actually so arrogant. Jun Qiji originally had a good first impression of her, but now it was somewhat discounted. But from the corner of his eyes, he saw Jun Zhuqing leaning on his chair and watching the few people arguing below. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, as though he found it rather interesting. The demonic aura around him seemed to have faded quite a bit. Jun Qiji muttered to himself. Jun Zhuqing really seemed to treat this Shang Guanyu differently. On the other side, after getting Jun Qiji's reply, Chu Liuyue's eyes curved and she looked at Tantai Ruoli. Eldest Princess Tantai should have heard His Majesty's words. Do you have any more questions? Tantai Ruoli was so rebuked that she couldn't say a word. There seemed to be a ball of fire burning wildly in her chest. As though he sensed her abnormality, Tantai Chen turned back to look at her with a warning in his eyes. Don't forget where you are. You must not be willful and cause trouble. Tantai Ruoli clenched her fists in her sleeves so hard that her knuckles turned white. It took her a lot of effort to restrain the anger in her heart. She forced the corners of her mouth to reveal a rather ferocious smile. No. Actually, I'm just a little curious. After all, this kind of thing is indeed not something that everyone can do. I wonder if Emperor Yuan Shi can demonstrate it in front of everyone so that we can be convinced? As long as she, Shang Guanyu, dared to nod, this hypocritical mask would immediately be torn off. Tantai Ruoli's eyes were fixed on her, and the others were also waiting in silence. They seemed to be equally curious. Shang Guanyu, was she really as powerful as she said? Chu Liyue smiled slowly and put down the cup in her hand with a bang. She looked up slightly and her eyes were cold. Everything I said is true. Whether you believe it or not, it's up to you. If you want me to demonstrate it in front of everyone and prove it. Do you think you're worthy? Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website of Self-Love. Chapter 950. Rumble. With a deafening boom, the ball of light that gathered the power of so many experts finally exploded. At the same time, a colorful barrier slowly opened in the middle. Finally, a pentagonal entrance was formed. Enter, Elder Hua Qian shouted in a deep voice. Of course, this shout was directed at the Baiming dynasty, which was ranked first. However, Jun Zhuqing didn't move. He only looked at Chu Liyue thoughtfully. Based on his understanding of her, she would definitely grab hold of such a good opportunity. Why didn't she want to enter in the end? A young man beside him couldn't help but remind him. Your Highness, we should go. Jun Zhuqing retracted his gaze and entered through the entrance in a flash. The others followed closely behind him. The 5 figures of the Dark North dynasty disappeared in front of everyone. A faint layer of colorful light spread out from all directions, once again covering the entrance of the pentagonal shape. Seeing this scene, everyone finally understood why there was a 4-hour interval between each entry. This barrier was simply too powerful. Even with so many top experts working together, it could only hold on for a short while. If the second batch of people wanted to enter, they would have to wait patiently for the experts to open the barrier again. And this was the time when the barrier was at its weakest. No wonder no one has entered the ancient Phoenix Mountain in the past 1,000 years. Such a strong barrier, I'm afraid only experts of the same level can forcefully open it, right? Yuan Jinghong muttered in shock. If it wasn't for the fact that the ancient Phoenix Mountain's power had gradually increased over the years, causing the barrier's power to weaken, they wouldn't have the chance to enter. The tense wait seemed to be especially unbearable. Night had completely fallen, and the sky was dark. Dark clouds covered the night sky, and the moon and stars couldn't be seen. Only the surrounding soldiers, each holding a pearl, could illuminate the foot of the mountain. Perhaps because the first batch of people had already entered, everyone's hearts were in suspense. I wonder what's going on inside. Jun Qiji put one hand behind his back and looked at the barrier that was still emitting a beautiful glow. His brows furrowed slightly. Your Majesty, don't worry. His Highness the Crown Prince is very powerful. This ancient phoenix mountain was left behind by Taizu. Everything will go smoothly. The palace servant next to her advised in a low voice. If it were anyone else, it would be understandable for them to be worried. But in Junjiuqing, there was really no need for that. The blood of the Dark North royal family flowed in his veins. Logically speaking, not only would he not encounter any danger after entering the ancient Phoenix Mountain, he might even encounter some opportunities. The Crown Prince has been stuck at a bottleneck for a long time now. Maybe he can take this opportunity to break through. That would be a great thing. Jun Qiji gently nodded. I hope so. As he spoke, he turned to look at Chu Luiyue. Like most people, he thought that Chu Luiyue would go in, but who would have thought, under the night sky, the light from the lanterns shone on her face. She was calm. She was not as nervous and uneasy as the others. It was as if she had nothing to do with it. Jun Qiji's heart skipped a beat. Such patience and mental state was not something that an ordinary person could possess. At this moment, Elder Hua Qian shouted again. Again. Boom. Following the loud noise, the colorful barrier inside the pentagon opened once again. Let's go. Jian Fengqi's gaze was firm as he turned around and left. Mu Hongyu and the rest also followed behind. Chang Wanzhou turned around and looked at Chu Luiyue. The youth's unbelievably beautiful face was still indifferent. Only his eyes seemed to be gradually stirring. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Chang Wanzhou's rose-like lips were tightly pursed. She tiptoed and followed the others. The figures of the few people also disappeared within the barrier. Seeing that the few of them had gone in, Chu Luiyue slowly exhaled and sat down on the prepared chair. He seemed to have made up his mind to wait outside peacefully. What a pity. Gong Sun Shao finally could not help but speak up when he saw this scene. Shangguanyu, how could you give up on such a good opportunity to cultivate? Even if you're the emperor, no one said that you can't go in. I heard that you're extremely talented. It's really a pity. Chu Luiyue smiled. Thank you for your concern, Elder Gongsun. This is a rare opportunity. I've already treasured it greatly by bringing them here. I don't dare to ask for anything else. Gongsun Shao could not help but feel even more puzzled when he heard her words. Could it be that she never thought of going in from the start? They were not allowed to go in because they were too old and did not meet the requirements. Furthermore, they were already so old. It would be too embarrassing to compete with young children. But Shangguanyu, she's only in her teens, right? Even if it was based on her previous age, she should only be 21 or 22 years old. Could it be that without the Tianjing Yuan Meridian, she also lost her drive? No matter how others guessed, Chu Luiyue remained unmoved. He sat on his seat and waited quietly. After that, no one asked him such questions again. Chu Luiyue finally had some peace and quiet. She wanted to take advantage of this time to cultivate, but when she thought about how she had to pay attention to the ancient Phoenix Mountain and the surrounding situation, she did not choose to cultivate with her essence force. Instead, she chose to redraw the level 9 Xian formation in her mind. It was not easy for her to draw it and connect it. Now, she had to consolidate it and study it more. Being able to see it was one thing, but being able to redraw it was another. And comprehending it required a lot of energy and spirit. Fortunately, she had done some research on level 9 Xian formations before, so it was not as difficult as she had expected. As time passed, the Xian formation in her mind became clearer. Third batch, enter. Following Elder Hua Qian's order, the 5 people from the East Com dynasty finally entered. Fourth batch, enter. This time, it was the Xian dynasty. At this moment, the sky was already turning white. Only the people from Taiyu dynasty were left. They were still waiting. After a night of nervous torture, many people looked much more haggard. Tantai Ruoli rubbed his eyes. His eyes, which were originally black and white, were now covered with blood vessels. The others weren't any better either. Although no one stopped them from resting and sleeping, who could sleep in such a place at such a time? Tantai Ruoli glanced at Chu Luiyue from the corner of his eye, but he still looked energetic. She clearly did not sleep the whole night. Why was there such a big difference? At this moment, Tantai Ruoli did not know that Chu Luiyue had been repeatedly drawing those level 9 Xian formations the whole night. His spirit was comforted and nourished by the high-level Xian formations. Naturally, he felt comfortable all over. Fifth batch, enter. Finally, they heard this sound. Tantai Ruoli and the others were invigorated. Before they could say anything, they entered one after another excitedly. Immediately, the colorful barrier closed again. At this moment, the Jinlingzi on Chu Luiyue's wrist suddenly trembled. She lowered her eyes to take a look, and her gaze turned sharp. Wu Ming's Jinlingzi had been crushed. Digression, read together at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 951. Roughly calculating, the time they had spent in the ancient Phoenix Mountain had only been 12 hours. Wu Ming had crushed the Jinlingzi. He must have activated the level 8 Xian formation and reached a point of no return. What had he encountered in this short period of time? Also, where were the others? Chu Luiyue calmly retracted her gaze. She moved her wrist slightly and covered the Jinlingzi. Her mind was active. Fortunately, because she had been waiting quietly, not many people were paying attention to her. This subtle change was not noticed by anyone. As the last group of people from the Taiyu dynasty entered the ancient Phoenix Mountain, the place quieted down again. According to the previous estimate, the ancient Phoenix Mountain would be open for about 15 days. Half a month later, the three elements as one would erupt with the power accumulated for 1,000 years. Everything on the ancient Phoenix Mountain would be restored to balance and automatically enter the next cycle. In other words, they would have to wait outside for half a month. Of course, this did not exclude the possibility of people coming out early because they could not withstand the pressure or because they were injured. Everything depended on one's own ability. Chu Luiyue glanced at the colorful barrier that had returned to normal. Her expression was slightly restrained. It seemed that she had to hurry up. At the same time, in the Lin City Palace, everything was normal. Because Jun Qiji and Jun Zhuqing had gone to the ancient Phoenix Mountain, and the sky was just beginning to brighten, the palace was very quiet. East Palace. A patrol team had just finished handing over to another team. Although the Crown Prince is not in the palace these few days, we still can't let down our guard. We have to keep a close watch and not let anyone in, understand? The leader of the men shouted in a deep voice. Yes, yes. Don't worry, we all know this. How can we not be attentive when doing things here? The few soldiers who took over seemed to be a little afraid of this man. They all responded respectfully. It's good that you know. Seeing that they were so obedient, the man nodded in satisfaction and raised his chin at the soldiers behind him. Let's go. With that, the group of people quickly left. Only after their figures had completely disappeared did the men who were taking over the shift let out a sigh of relief. Big Brother Qian, that man is so powerful. Everyone is patrolling, but why does it seem like he is taller than everyone else? A skinny young man asked in a low voice. Little Song, you've replaced Fourth Brother's shift today. This is your first time here, so you don't know. That man just now is called Shang Binghe. He's someone we can't afford to offend. It's not just us, but everyone who serves in the Eastern Palace has to give him face. Oh. Is he really that powerful? Little Song's eyes widened. He seemed to be very surprised. Could it be that he has some background that we can't afford to offend? That's not it. The only reason he could be so arrogant was because he was the Crown Prince's trusted aide. Ever since the Crown Prince returned from his training 2 years ago, he had inexplicably brought this person back. Furthermore, he trusted this person very much. Many important matters were entrusted to him, including the defense of the Eastern Palace. That's right. With the Crown Prince's protection, how could he not be arrogant? Hey! Someone at the side couldn't help but interject. Little Song nodded in understanding and muttered. So that's how it is, then I'll have to be more careful when I see him in the future, haha. That's not necessarily the case. You're just temporarily replacing fourth brother for the next few days. Once fourth brother recovers, you'll be switched back. Then you won't have to be so worried. The man known as Big Brother Qian patted Little Song on the shoulder. Little Song couldn't help but purse his lips. Big Brother Qian, I don't mean to say this, but you've worked in the Eastern Palace for many years. You're much more experienced than him. Your status should be higher than his, but now, hearing this, Qian Dihao's face stiffened, and the others also fell silent. Little Song seemed to realize his slip of the tongue and hurriedly said, "Look at my mouth, I really don't know how to speak. Big Brother Qian, don't mind it. How about? I just asked for a jug of good wine for you to taste." Everyone close to Qian Dihao knew that he had no other hobbies besides drinking. As expected, Qian Dihao's expression relaxed a little when he heard this. But he still frowned and sternly said, "What are you saying? How can you drink at a time like this?" Little Song giggled. "Big Brother Qian, don't misunderstand. I'm not asking you to drink now. I'm just asking you to take it home and taste it. You're the best at wine tasting, so why don't you take a look at this wine for me? I'm not very good at drinking, so it's a waste to leave it with me." Without waiting for an explanation, he took out a jug of wine from his universe ring. It seemed that he had accidentally spilled some of the wine because he didn't hold it properly. The clear fragrance of the wine instantly spread. Qian Dihao's eyes lit up. This wine was clearly supreme grade. He immediately wavered, and under Little Song's insistence, he reluctantly accepted the jug of wine. All right. Get to work," Qian Dihao called out. "Now that His Highness the Crown Prince isn't here, you have to take a closer look, understand?" "Yes." An hour later, Little Song found the unconscious Qian Dihao in a corner, reeking of alcohol. He grinned, and his youthful face was suddenly filled with a hint of slyness. "Hey, immortal drunken wine, plus the special ingredients I added, even a golden immortal can't withstand it." As he spoke, he took a few steps forward and dragged him to a more secluded place. "Since you've drunk my wine, let me borrow your clothes for a while." Not long after, Qian Dihao appeared in front of the inner courtyard of the Eastern Palace and showed his token. "The Crown Prince ordered me to come to the study to retrieve something." Seeing the person who came, the guard in charge of guarding the place was very puzzled. The Eastern Palace was divided into an inner courtyard and an outer courtyard, and the people on both sides guarded it. Especially the people in charge of the outer courtyard, they almost never came to the inner courtyard. What was Qian Dihao doing here? The two of them looked at each other and found that the other was at a loss. "Captain Qian, you said you came to retrieve something on the Crown Prince's orders? But shouldn't His Highness the Crown Prince have already entered the ancient Phoenix Mountain?" Qian Dihao raised his eyelids. This was His Highness the Crown Prince's arrangement before he left. "Why, are you doubting me or His Highness the Crown Prince? We wouldn't dare." Qian Dihao was considered an old man in the Eastern Palace and had some influence. Moreover, His Highness the Crown Prince's usual style of doing things was indeed more casual. "Please. Do you need me to send someone to go with you?" Qian Dihao glanced at them indifferently. The Crown Prince's secret order, the fewer people who know, the better, understand? The two of them didn't dare to ask any more questions and could only agree. "Yes." Qian Dihao adjusted his collar and walked inside. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 952. Time passed quickly. Everyone was still waiting quietly at the foot of ancient Phoenix Mountain. In the blink of an eye, it was evening again. Chu Luiyue was slightly relieved that after Wu Ming's Jin Lingzi was crushed, the same thing did not happen to the others. "Everyone has been waiting here for a day. Why don't you all go back and rest and come back tomorrow?" Jun Qiji finally spoke. Although it was not a big problem for cultivators to stay up for a few days and nights, waiting for a total of half a month was a little too long. Moreover, the people waiting here were all the emperors of the various dynasties. None of them were idle people. Even Jun Qiji himself had to find time to go back and deal with some matters. Gongsun Xiao and the others' expressions changed slightly when they heard this. Leaving at this time. Was it not a little too early? What's more, they were still inside. It was really a little worrying. Thank you for your understanding, Your Majesty. I'll go back first. In the silence, Chu Luiyue was the first to stand up. Everyone was taken aback and looked at her in shock. Was there a mistake? Shang Guanyu wanted to leave first. Was she not worried at all about the few people from the Tianling dynasty who had already gone in? One had to know that their overall strength was the weakest among these people. Their situation was not optimistic. Jun Qiji was also a little surprised, but since Chu Luiyue said so, he naturally could not say anything and nodded. I'll send someone to send you back. Chu Luiyue smiled. Thank you, Your Majesty. Then, she turned to Elder Chen Ku and the others. I'll go back and rest for a while. Thank you for your hard work, elders. After saying that, he really lifted his foot and left. The whole process took less than 15 minutes. It could be said that it was clean and efficient. She's still young after all. She can't wait anymore. Gongsun Xiao laughed. There's nothing to worry about with the elders guarding here. Jun Qiji said and stood up as well. I still have some things to do, so I won't stay any longer. Everyone, please help yourselves. If there are any problems, the elders and General Qi will help you solve them. This was Northern Darkness's territory, so they had nothing to worry about. They could not see the slightest bit of the situation inside by waiting outside. There was really no need to wait here bitterly. Seeing that Jun Qiji and Chu Luiyue had left, Gongsun Zhao's mind. He looked at Ning's eyes. Brother Ning, what's your plan? Are you still going to continue waiting? Ning Yuan's expression was calm. Of you, I'll wait. Gongsun Xiao choked. Gongsun Xiao gave up on the idea of leaving and waited with them. He originally wanted to try cultivating while waiting, but unfortunately, his mind was restless and he couldn't concentrate. In the end, he simply gave up. So be it. Did you find out where the teleportation array leads to? Not yet. But I found that the person you asked me to find seemed to have appeared in the study before. Digression, there's only 4 updates today, it's impossible. But I'll have to trouble everyone to wait again. Cough cough, around 8 o'clock. Trojan horse. There's too much going on these 2 days. I'll try to adjust the update later. Trojan horse again. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 953. Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed. Really? When she asked Wu Yao to do this in the beginning, she didn't have much hope. After all, she was unfamiliar with the northern underworld. Finding her father was like finding a needle in a haystack. Among the 13 Yu, only Wu Yao had been to the northern underworld before and was familiar with this place. Originally, the 13 Yu had received the news and were rushing back to West Hill. However, considering that her father might be trapped in Lin City, Chu Luiyue asked Wu Yao to change direction halfway and come here first. She didn't expect Wu Yao to really find clues. Wu Yao nodded slightly and sized up Chu Luiyue's expression. Seeing her reaction, he couldn't help but be curious. Your Highness, this person, what's his relationship with you? Why are you so worried? Her Highness didn't show her emotions. There were only a few people in the world who could make her so worried. He had only received orders to find someone, but he didn't know who it was. Chu Luiyue explained. That's my father, Chu Ning. Wu Yao was stunned for a moment before he immediately understood. Surnamed Chu. Her Highness's father, then he must be the biological father of Her Highness's current body. No wonder she was so concerned. It seemed that the relationship between His Highness and Chu Ning was quite close. After figuring out Chu Ning's identity, Wu Yao immediately connected a lot of things together and came to a realization. I see, you said that you found traces of my father in Prince Baiming's study? Chu Luyue asked. That's right. Wu Yao's expression became much more serious. You sent an item of Lord Chu Ning's that had his aura on it. After I entered the study, I searched carefully and confirmed that he had indeed been there. Wu Yao liked to brew wine and had a sharp nose. Moreover, he happened to have a sniffer beast, so it was very convenient for him to find people. According to my calculations, it should be half a month ago. Chu Luyue thought to herself. At that time, her father should have just been brought to Lin City. Not long after that, Jun Zhuqing sent her a note telling her about the 1-month appointment. She wondered how her father had been in the past 1.5 months, and where he was now. Is it possible to follow this clue and continue to find father's whereabouts? Wu Yao frowned slightly. I'm afraid this will take some time. After all, too much time had passed, and Lord Chu Ning's aura had almost completely dissipated. This time, it took me a lot of effort to confirm that he had been to the study. Besides. He paused and looked up slightly. Besides, the fact that Lord Chu Ning was able to enter Prince Baiming's study proves that the Crown Prince is behind this. You might not know this person very well. He is a vicious and merciless person. Most importantly, the entire Lin City was his territory. As long as he wanted to, he could easily erase any traces. If he intends to hide Lord Chu Ning, then, the difficulty will definitely be greater. There's no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. As long as he did it, he would definitely leave behind clues. Chu Luyue muttered to himself for a moment. Now that Jun Zhuqing has entered the ancient Phoenix Mountain, he won't be coming out for a while. Moreover, the attention of others will also be diverted to this matter. As long as you are patient, you will definitely be able to find the other party's negligence. This half a month is the best time. Wu Yao's eyes turned. So His Highness didn't follow into the ancient Phoenix Mountain because of this matter. To be able to make His Highness give up such a great opportunity and do his best to save the person, it seems that this Lord Chu Ning and His Highness do have a deep relationship. Upon realizing this, Wu Yao placed more importance on this matter. When he saw Chu Liyue's tightly knitted brows, he opened his mouth and said, "Don't worry. Your Highness, don't worry. Even if Wu Yao's nose is ruined, he will definitely help you find Lord Chu Ning." Chu Luyue laughed in spite of himself. It was clearly with the help of the wind-sniffing beast. How did it become your credit in the end? Wu Yao chuckled. It is this subordinate's magical beast. Naturally, this subordinate will also be responsible for this. Chu Luyue shook his head with a smile and didn't argue with him. Wu Yao's personality was free and easy, but he was bold and meticulous. He had always been very reliable. Chu Luyue was also very assured of him. Actually, this subordinate thinks that Lord Chu Ning might still be trapped in the palace. After joking, Wu Yao's expression became much more serious. Chu Luyue paused. What do you mean? Prince Baiming has always been living in the Eastern Palace. Even though he is already in his 20s, it seems that he has no intention of moving out of the palace. Moreover, the Eastern Palace is very strictly guarded, far stricter than ordinary palaces. This subordinate spent a lot of effort to enter the study. I originally wanted to go to other places, but I didn't succeed. Within the inner courtyard of the Eastern Palace, every room is guarded by someone. Apart from Jun Zhuqing, no one is allowed to enter. Just this point alone was strange enough. Wu Yao had stayed in the northern underworld for a period of time and was also very familiar with this crown prince. Even so, before today, he would never have thought that the Eastern Palace's security would be so tight. Even a ghost would not believe that there was nothing fishy about this. However, perhaps because Jun Zhuqing's style of doing things had always been so willful and reckless, even Jun Qiji did not say anything. Chu Luyue tapped her fingers on the table, as if thinking about something. After a moment, she raised her head. If you want to know the answer, just go and investigate. This princess will enter the Eastern Palace at night tonight. Wu Yao was shocked and immediately said, Your Highness, you can't. That place is heavily guarded, and there are several barriers. If you go now, you will be discovered if you are not careful. Even he, after pondering for a few days, assumed an identity, and finally managed to sneak in. If your Highness wants to force your way in, it will be very dangerous. It is tantamount to entering the tiger's den. Chu Luyue smiled. Do you think that, with my current realm, I will be discovered if I go and won't be able to escape? Wu Yao choked and his voice became much lower. That's not it. It's just that. This subordinate is just worried about you. He could see that Her Highness's current strength was at the peak of the 6th rank. This was already very outstanding in the eyes of ordinary people, but it was really impossible to break into the Dark North Imperial Palace alone with this strength. This subordinate knows that your current strength is not weak and that you have contracted a divine beast, but there are many experts in the Dark North Imperial Palace. Even if you can barely avoid the detection of these people, you can't open the Imperial Palace's barrier formed by the 9th level Xian formation. Chu Luyue raised her eyebrows slightly. You said, the Dark North Imperial Palace's barrier is formed by a 9th level Xian formation? Is it the same as the borders? Wu Yao was stunned. It seems a little similar. What's wrong? Nothing. Chu Liyue's lips curled up, and a light flashed in her eyes. The heavens are helping me. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 954. Wu Yao drew a map of the palace and marked out the location of the East Palace. Chu Luyue looked at it for a while and decided on the route. Wu Yao wanted to go with him, but was rejected by Chu Luyue. He asked him to wait outside the palace. The two of them were too big of a target. It was more convenient to go alone. Wu Yao was worried, but seeing that Chu Luyue had made up his mind, he could only agree. After the discussion, night fell. Chu Luyue glanced at the sky outside, and it was already completely dark. Both of them had changed into black robes, and their faces were completely covered with hoods. Then, they headed straight for the Dark North Palace. Late at night, Linzhou City was quiet. Vaguely, one could hear the wind rustling. Chu Luyue and Wu Yao were very discreet. They arrived outside the palace without any obstructions. Of course, they could not enter from the main gate. So, after discussing, they chose the position closest to the East Palace and planned to enter by climbing over the wall. Stay here and provide support at any time, Chu Luyue said in a low voice. Wu Yao nodded. His eyes were much more serious. Your Highness, be careful. Chu Luyue turned around and looked at the tall palace wall. The Dark North Palace occupied a huge area. The length of the palace wall was also very shocking. If they sent soldiers to guard every set distance, it would undoubtedly consume a lot of manpower and resources. So, the Dark North dynasty did not do so. They only sent a few small teams to patrol in turns. On the surface, this seemed to cause the defense to be lax. But in fact, they dared to do so for a reason. Above the palace walls, there was an extremely powerful barrier. Just this alone was enough to stop most of the cultivators. One must know that this was a barrier built by a level 9 Xian formation. If the intruder was too strong, even the barrier could not stop them. Then, the soldiers in charge of patrolling would not be a match. Therefore, the defense of the Dark North Imperial Palace was largely dependent on this layer of barrier. Standing close to it, there was nothing but the palace wall. The barrier was also nowhere to be seen. However, Chu Luyue knew that it was right in front of him. She held her breath and lifted her finger slightly. A wisp of origin power flew out of her slender white fingertips. This strand of silver origin power rapidly dispersed into several strands and intertwined to form a strange palm-sized diagram. Wu Yao took a closer look and realized that this small pattern seemed somewhat familiar. Chu Liuyue's fingers moved slightly, and the second pattern appeared one after another. Then, she connected the two patterns together. Wu Yao stared at it for a long time. At this moment, he suddenly thought of something, and shock flashed across his eyes. This seems to be, as if to confirm his guess, a ripple suddenly appeared in the void in front of the two of them. Wang! A transparent barrier slowly appeared in front of the two of them. Above the barrier, an extremely thin silver light flickered. From afar, it looked like a spider web. However, upon closer inspection, one would realize that it was actually an incomparably complicated profound formation. The barrier surged, and silver streams of light intertwined. In front of Chu Liyue, a circular profound formation gradually formed. Wu Yao saw clearly that this profound formation was almost exactly the same as the first pattern that Chu Liyue had just displayed. In comparison, Chu Liyue's formation was much smaller, and its aura was also much weaker. However, the pattern on it was completely the same, so it could still be perfectly compatible. Then, a second profound formation appeared beside it. It was connected to the first one. This scene was exactly the same as the one that Chu Liyue had displayed. If not for the difference in size, Wu Yao would have thought that there was a mirror in the middle, reflecting the same profound formation. He opened his mouth wide in shock, and for a moment, he didn't know how to react. Wasn't His Highness's physical body destroyed? Didn't he start cultivating again? Didn't his strength and innate talent decrease? What is going on? This is a level 9 profound formation. Wu Yao's gaze was sluggish. He slowly turned his neck stiffly and looked at Chu Liyue in disbelief. Her expression was calm and indifferent, as if she was just doing a very ordinary and trivial thing. Your Highness. You have replicated these two level 9 profound formations? After a while, Wu Yao finally found his voice and asked with difficulty. Chu Liyue didn't look at him and nodded. Yes. Unfortunately, I only found these two identical ones, so I can only start from this position. The barrier here wasn't exactly the same as the one at the border. Fortunately, it seemed that they had used the same level 9 profound masters, so they could barely find two familiar profound formations. This was much more convenient. The corner of Wu Yao's mouth twitched. Unfortunately. I only found these two identical ones. What does this mean? Wu Yao swallowed his saliva and couldn't help but laugh. That. Your Highness, do you mean that you have other level 9 profound formations to choose from? That's not it. Wu Yao heaved a sigh of relief. I just remembered some at the border. I didn't expect them to come in handy now. It's considered a lucky hit. Chu Liyue said indifferently. She gathered force in her palm and injected it into the profound formation in front of her again. Buzz. Above the two palm-sized silver patterns, an extremely tyrannical fluctuation suddenly surged out. This fluctuation quickly flew out and headed towards the barrier on the opposite side. Bang! A slight collision sound was heard. Between the two pairs of profound formations, one big and one small, seemed to form a bridge that was suffused with a faint glow, connecting them together. Chu Liyue's gaze was fixed. In the next moment, under Wu Yao's shocked gaze, Chu Liyue's wrist moved. The two palm-sized profound formations suddenly separated from the middle. A crack appeared from within, and it was rapidly spreading. Crack. A crisp sound was heard. The two profound formations on the barrier in front of the two were affected by this force and also separated from the middle. A narrow but perfect entrance was created. Chu Liyue quickly looked up and looked at other places. When she saw that the other places on the barrier were not affected by this crack, she heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. This barrier was formed by many level 9 profound formations, and a slight movement in one part would affect the whole situation. If she made any movements on it, the slightest bit of carelessness would immediately spread and cause a reaction in the entire barrier. Fortunately, she specially chose the connecting points of the two barriers and carefully separated them. In this way, the overall layout of the barrier was not affected, and thus, it could avoid being discovered by others. Wu Yao, who was at the side, was already dumbstruck, and his entire mind was blank. It wasn't that he didn't know that Her Highness had astonishing talent in mystic cultivation. Otherwise, she wouldn't have broken through to become a level 8 mystic cultivator so early. However, not to mention that she had to start all over again and had not recovered to her previous realm at all. Even if she was still at the peak of her strength, it was still inconceivable for her to open a barrier constructed by a level 9 profound formation as a level 8 mystic cultivator. Chu Luiyue did not continue to waste time on this. She took a step forward and entered in a flash. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 955. Chu Luiyue's figure quickly disappeared in front of him, and the crack on the barrier quickly closed. In the blink of an eye, the two Xian formations that had been forcefully separated were reconnected. The silver light flickered and then gradually dimmed. The barrier returned to its normal state and became transparent again. It was as if nothing had happened. Wu Yao closed his eyes, still in a daze. Then, he couldn't help but pinch his face. Hiss, the piercing pain woke him up abruptly, and he hurriedly stopped. But at the same time, it made him realize that everything that had happened was real. Her Highness had actually opened the Dark North Imperial Palace's barrier. Damn, Wu Yao couldn't help but mutter. Could it be that Her Highness had just found a place to continue cultivating these 2 years? Otherwise, how could she have done that? But thinking about it carefully, that didn't seem to be the case. Big Brother had sent a message saying that Her Highness had indeed changed her physical body and returned to the Western Tomb from Yao Chen with the identity of Chu Luiyue. It seemed that her physical body had been a good-for-nothing with a damaged Yuan meridian, but now, no wonder Her Highness was so certain that she would talk about the Eastern Palace all night. Perhaps he still had other trump cards up his sleeves. Wu Yao rubbed his temples and felt a headache coming on. With such an outstanding master, it would be very difficult for them as subordinates, all right? Chu Luiyue's figure perfectly blended into the night. Her figure was nimble and her steps were fast. Coupled with the fact that she had already memorized the layout of the palace, her journey was very smooth as she headed straight for the Eastern Palace. She met some palace guards on night patrol, but she had already concealed her aura, so she wasn't discovered. About 15 minutes later, she finally arrived at the outer courtyard of the Eastern Palace. Perhaps because the Crown Prince wasn't around and it was night, the security of the outer courtyard of the Eastern Palace wasn't very strict. No one would have thought that someone would be so daring as to sneak in at night. They also didn't expect that such a powerful barrier couldn't stop someone. Chu Luiyue quietly slipped into the inner court. As soon as Chu Luiyue stepped into the boundary of the inner courtyard, he immediately felt the obvious difference between this place and the outer courtyard. In the darkness, several hidden and powerful auras were hidden in several corners. In addition to the guards on the surface, there were also many experts guarding the inner court in secret. Fortunately, Chu Luiyue had made ample preparations. As long as she didn't bump into them head-on, these people wouldn't be able to easily discover her. Chu Luiyue was hiding in the dark. He closed his eyes and held his breath, trying to find Chu Ning's aura. Back when she was in Yao Chen's capital, Chu Ning was always worried about her because of her repeated mishaps. Therefore, she left something on Chu Ning's body so that they could sense each other within a certain range. Now, he didn't know if he could rely on this to find him. The surroundings were silent as Chu Luiyue waited patiently. After an unknown period of time, a weak fluctuation came over. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened his eyes. He looked in a certain direction. It seemed to be in the study. Chu Luiyue's brows furrowed slightly. Wu Yao had previously said that her father had entered this study a month and a half ago, but the aura inside was already very faint, as if he had left for a long time. However, this fluctuation was indeed coming from there. Perhaps it was hidden in the secret passage under the study, or in some other unknown location. No matter what, she had to go in and take a look. It was a pity that there were several guards outside the study. It would be difficult to sneak in without being noticed. Just as Chu Luiyue was thinking to herself, the sound of footsteps came from not far away. She quickly looked back and saw a man walking over from the outer courtyard. She immediately hid her figure completely. The footsteps were getting closer and closer, and the man's figure and face gradually became clearer. At this moment, the night was dark, and only the stars were flickering slightly. Chu Luiyue could only see a rough outline. For some reason, she felt that this person looked familiar. Soon, she realized that this man seemed to be planning to go to the study. When he reached the door of the study, the soldier in charge of guarding immediately bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Lord Shang." Shang Binghe nodded. "Is there anything unusual in the inner courtyard today?" "Nothing." The soldier shook his head in unison. That's good." Shang Binghe nodded. With one hand behind his back, he looked very imposing. "The crown prince is not here, but we must not relax." "Yes." One of the soldiers hesitated for a moment and couldn't help but ask. "Lord Shang, didn't you already patrol during the day? Why are you here so late?" Shang Binghe glanced at the tightly shut door of the study. For some reason, he had been feeling uneasy for the past 2 days. He had originally planned to rest, but his heart was beating so fast that he couldn't calm down. Thus, he decided to take a look again. "It's nothing. The crown prince is not here, so I wanted to take a look and ensure that everything is safe." The two soldiers nodded in understanding. Shang Binghe had always been very cautious and strict, so it wasn't strange that he would do such a thing. What was rare was that the crown prince seemed to trust him very much and gave him a lot of authority. This allowed him to move around in the inner courtyard. He was highly regarded, so the people below him were naturally very respectful and polite to him. After confirming that there were no problems here, Shang Binghe planned to turn around and leave. However, just as he turned around, he suddenly stopped and stared at the lock of the door. Sensing the change in his aura, the two soldiers were a little confused and nervous. "Lord Shang, why are you? Did anyone enter this study during the day?" Shang Binghe asked coldly. Yes, Qian Dihao came, said that he was on the orders of the crown prince." Slap. Slap. Before they could finish, Shang Binghe gave the two of them a hard slap. They were sent flying. Bang! The two of them fell heavily to the ground. They spat out blood. Fools. Shang Binghe's face was ashen. Who is that Qian Dihao? How could the crown prince give him an order alone? Do you have brains? The two soldiers were beaten until they couldn't speak. They fell to the ground and spat out blood. They were on the verge of death. Shang Binghe was powerful and didn't hold back when he attacked in anger. How could these people be his match? He strode towards the study room, unlocked the door, and pushed the door open. Chu Luiyue looked at the open door and her eyes moved slightly. At this moment, there was a sudden fluctuation on the Jin Lingzi. She lowered her eyes to take a look and was slightly shocked. Yuan Jinghong's Jin Lingzi was also crushed. She gritted her teeth and activated her force. The peach blossom mark on her wrist suddenly glowed. The next moment, her figure suddenly disappeared. Digression, 6:00 in the evening. Sigh, it's clearly the same time as the first update. The Academy has drawn a lot. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 956. After Shang Binghe entered the study, he immediately conducted a careful inspection. But after looking around, he did not find any traces of it being rummaged through. There was not even the slightest sign that someone had been here. But this made Shang Binghe even more uneasy. Because this meant that the other party was not here for the items in the room, but for something else. Who knew what kind of intentions they had to deliberately enter this place and be so careful not to leave any traces behind? Finally, Shang Binghe walked to the bookshelf and searched it for a while. Then, on the wall behind the bookshelf, a hidden compartment popped up. He took out something from the hidden compartment, looked at it for a while, and seemed to heave a sigh of relief before putting it back. Thank goodness, His voice was very low, but one could still hear the relief and fear in it. After standing still for a while, he pushed the hidden compartment back and did something on the bookshelf, as if he was restoring the mechanism on it. After a while, after confirming that everything was safe, he turned around and walked out, locking the door again. Shang Binghe stood on the steps in front of the door, his voice cold. "Bring Qian Dihao here immediately." Realizing that something was wrong, the soldiers in charge of guarding reacted and hurriedly responded. "Yes, yes." After saying that, he hurriedly left, even though his legs were still nimble. The soldiers who were beaten half to death by him earlier were lying on the ground, their faces and bodies covered in blood, but they did not dare to beg for mercy, only trembling in fear. They knew very well that if something happened, they would be the first to die. Shang Binghe coldly glanced at the two of them. "Men. Tie the two of them up. When Qian Dihao comes, we will confront him together." "Yes." Outside the study, the smell of blood permeated the air, and the cold and oppressive atmosphere was almost suffocating. And inside the study, Chu Luiyue was finally able to breathe. She moved her wrists and neck, feeling sore and refreshed. When Shang Binghe came in, she took the opportunity to teleport and sneak in as well. In the end, Shang Binghe searched for a long time, forcing her to curl up in an extremely narrow space, her entire body almost stiff. Fortunately, he finally went out and closed the door again. This undoubtedly made things much more convenient for Chu Luiyue. Even she had to admit that her luck tonight was truly heaven-defying. After confirming that the people outside were still waiting to catch Qian Dihao, Chu Luiyue felt a little relieved and silently walked to the bookshelf. Just now, she only vaguely saw Shang Binghe fiddling around here for a while and opening the secret compartment, but she didn't see clearly how he did it. Therefore, she had to think of a way to break it as soon as possible. At first glance, this bookshelf was no different from an ordinary bookshelf. There were no barriers, no profound formations, and there weren't even any special patterns. It was normal and ordinary. Chu Luiyue stared at it for a while before hesitantly making a move. She had once learned mechanisms from Xin Yi for a period of time, so she could barely recognize that this seemed to be some sort of mechanism. However, even she wasn't sure if she could successfully open it. After that, she tried several methods, but there was no reaction from this thing. "Lord Shang, Qian Dihao is here." Suddenly, an ear-piercing voice came from outside. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Her time was running out. She had to open this mechanism as soon as possible. In a moment of desperation, she quickly tried again. This time, there was finally a change on the bookshelf. The originally flat and smooth surface suddenly split into several parts, and they rose and fell, intersecting with each other. It was a pity that the secret compartment didn't pop out. "Qian Dihao, do you know why you were sent here?" This was Shang Binghe's voice. Fine beads of sweat appeared on Chu Luiyue's forehead, and she was extremely nervous. She tried again. This subordinate doesn't know." Qian Dihao's voice was at a loss, and there was a trace of fear. He was originally sleeping soundly, but who knew that he was suddenly picked up from the bed and brought directly to the palace? And in the courtyard of the Crown Prince's study. Seeing Shang Binghe's expression, he knew that something bad had happened. However, he really didn't know what was going on. "They said that you entered the Crown Prince's study today?" Shang Binghe said coldly, and then he suddenly shouted, "How dare you!" Slap. A loud slap sounded. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something, and she immediately tried again. The wooden compartment changed, but there was still no movement from the secret compartment. This subordinate didn't, speak. What is going on? Qian Dihao's argument sounded particularly weak at this moment. Could it be that the people in the inner courtyard joined forces to spread rumors against you? "Do you want me to bring you in now, and help you recall?" After Shang Binghe finished speaking, there was a commotion in the courtyard. Among them, the footsteps were getting closer. They seemed to really want to come in and take a look. Chu Luiyue's back was almost drenched in sweat. Click. This was the sound of the lock being unlocked. Chu Luyue clenched her teeth, and her hands quickly swept across the bookshelf, making one last attempt. If this still didn't work, then no matter what, she would have to give up. Tap. Only an extremely soft sound was heard, and the secret compartment finally popped out again. Chu Luyue directly went forward and took out the item inside. It was cold to the touch, and it was heavy. After clearly seeing the item in her hand, Chu Luyue's face flashed with a trace of surprise. This was actually a bronze mirror. However, unlike ordinary bronze mirrors, this one didn't reflect the face of the person holding the mirror. Instead, it was filled with a thick blood-red color. At first glance, it was like a sea of blood, and it was extremely terrifying. A gloomy and terrifying aura spread out from it, almost suffocating. An indescribable chill rose from the bottom of Chu Luyue's feet, and it made her whole body feel cold. She didn't know why, but with just one look, she felt an extremely terrifying murderous intent. She tried her best to control her impulse to throw the mirror out, and stared at it for a long time. Gradually, the bloody aura on the mirror dissipated bit by bit, and a blurry scene appeared. It seemed to be a cage, and the surroundings were dark, and nothing could be seen clearly. There was only a blurry figure in the iron cage. He knelt on the ground, and there was a chain around his neck. His head was lowered, and there were bloodstains on his body, and he didn't move at all. Chu Luyue's heart suddenly jumped. As soon as she saw the figure, she recognized that it was Chu Ning. She bit her lips tightly, and tried her best to restrain herself from shouting out loud. After not seeing him for so long, he seemed to have lost a lot of weight. The clothes on his body looked empty, and she could even see his wrists under his sleeves. They were so thin that only bones were left. Chu Luyue's chest suddenly surged with endless anger, and it was about to explode. At this moment, with a bang, the door was opened. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 957. Who is it? Shang Binghe, who had just barged in with Qian Dihao's collar, sensed that something was wrong. He threw Qian Dihao to the ground and quickly searched the entire study. It was empty. However, Shang Binghe was sure that there was someone here. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat and he looked at the bookshelf. There were traces of someone tampering with it, as if someone had tried to force it open in a hurry. His heart sank. He quickly walked over to where the hidden compartment was. Everything was normal. He quickly restored the mechanism on the bookshelf to its original state and opened the secret compartment. That thing was still lying inside, safe and sound. Shang Binghe let out a long sigh. It's good that it's not lost, it's good that it's not lost. If this item was lost, all of them would have to bear the consequences. Judging from the situation, someone must have tried to open the mechanism and steal the item in the secret compartment, but before they could succeed, they were interrupted by Shang Binghe and escaped in a hurry. Shang Binghe confirmed that there was nothing wrong with the item before he put the secret compartment back. However, his expression was still very ugly. No matter what, someone had broken into the study and almost stolen the item. When the Crown Prince returned, he would not let it go so easily. Shang Binghe walked to Qian Dihao with a gloomy face. Qian Dihao felt the dangerous aura from Shang Binghe and instinctively shrank back. Lord Shang. I'm innocent, I'm really innocent. I didn't do anything. Swoosh. Shang Binghe stabbed with his sword. It pressed tightly against Qian Dihao's neck. He narrowed his eyes. Tell me what happened during the day. He was sure that Qian Dihao did not have the guts to do so. There was probably something fishy going on. As expected, Qian Dihao was stunned for a moment when he heard this. He suddenly thought of something and hurriedly said, It's Xiao Song. It must be him. Then, he recounted everything that had happened. Shang Binghe was so angry that he laughed. So, because of this jug of wine, someone took advantage of you? Qian Dihao, how many lives do you have to drink wine while patrolling the Eastern Palace? This was a serious dereliction of duty. And the serious consequences caused by this were beyond imagination. Do you know that this mistake was caused by your drinking? Even if you died 100 times, it wouldn't be enough. Qian Dihao had no choice but to frantically kowtow and beg for mercy. Actually, he didn't intend to drink it at first, but for some reason, when he thought about how he was suppressed by Shang Binghe, he felt very depressed and couldn't help but drink it. Originally, he only wanted to take a few sips to drown his sorrows. Who would have thought that he would lose consciousness in the end? When he woke up again, he found that he had been unconscious in a corner for a long time. Because he knew that what he did was wrong, he felt very guilty, so he pretended that nothing had happened and went back. Who would have thought that such a big thing would happen here? Shang Binghe clenched his fists. Go. Bring that person here as well. However, he knew that since the other party was so well prepared, there was an 80% chance that they would not be able to find him. Sure enough, not long after, a servant came to report that he had disappeared. When Qian Dihao heard this, he immediately knelt down on the ground, his face ashen. He knew that he was finished this time. Shang Binghe had already expected this, but even though he was filled with anger, he still had to suppress the matter first. Immediately seal off the news and don't allow it to spread out of the Eastern Palace. If the slightest bit of news leaks out, you will be held responsible. Also, lock Qian Dihao up and wait for His Highness the Crown Prince to return before making a decision. Yes. Shang Binghe frowned and pondered for a moment before walking outside. Pass down the order, say that a high-level magical beast ran out of the hunting ground. Immediately send more people to search the palace. At the same time, strengthen the security of the palace gates. Don't allow that magical beast to escape. Yes. Outside the palace walls, Wu Yao was anxiously waiting. His Highness had gone in for a long time, but he hadn't come out yet. There was no news at all. He didn't know what the situation was like. At this time, the sky was almost bright. If His Highness didn't come out in time, it would be even more troublesome. Just as Wu Yao was filled with worry, the transparent barrier in front of him suddenly fluctuated. He looked over in surprise and saw a crack appear in the middle of the barrier. Immediately, a familiar figure leaped out from it. It was Chu Luiyue. Your Highness. Wu Yao immediately went up to him happily. You're finally out. But when he walked closer, he realized that Chu Luiyue's expression was a little strange. Your Highness, are you all right? Wu Yao asked worriedly. Then, as if he thought of something, he looked behind Chu Luiyue. It was empty. This. Did they not find Lord Chu Ning? Chu Luiyue shook his head. It's fine. At least I know the general whereabouts of father. Unfortunately, I can't bring father out today. On one hand, she wasn't sure of the way to find father's location. On the other hand, the Eastern Palace was heavily guarded. She could go back and forth alone, but it would be much more difficult to bring father along. Moreover, from what she saw just now, once father broke free from the cage, he might be immediately discovered. Without sufficient preparation, it would be impossible to do so. Wu Yao nodded. It was actually good to be able to confirm the whereabouts of people. After all, the person who took Chu Ning away and locked him up was the infamous Prince Baiming. It was already very difficult for His Highness to successfully sneak into the Eastern Palace this time to find this information. But looking at His Highness, it seems that Lord Chu Ning's situation is not optimistic. At this moment, there seemed to be a sudden commotion within the palace walls. Chu Luiyue turned around to take a look. Within the high palace walls, there were flames everywhere, and it was very bright. It sounded like they were looking for someone. She stared coldly at them. Suddenly, the Jinlingzi on her wrist vibrated again. Her heart skipped a beat. With the previous incident where Wu Ming and Yuan Jinghong crushed the Jinlingzi, her heart would tremble every time she felt the Jinlingzi's movement. A sense of uneasiness surged from the depths of her heart. She turned her wrist and took a look. As expected. This time, it was Mu Hongyu who crushed the Jinlingzi. It had only been 2 or 3 days since they entered the ancient Phoenix Mountain, but among the 5 of them, 3 had already chosen to crush the Jinlingzi. Something must have happened. Chu Luiyue suppressed the surging emotions in her heart. Let's go. That night, the dark North Imperial Palace was in chaos. Chu Luiyue acted as if nothing had happened and returned to her residence overnight. It was not until morning that she got up, packed up, and went to the ancient Phoenix Mountain again. When she arrived, Chu Luiyue greeted Ning Yuan and the others in turn and sat down in her seat. Tan Taichen stared at her for a long time and asked ambiguously, "Yesterday, something happened in the palace." "I heard that something happened in the palace yesterday." "Sheng Guanyu, what do you think?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 958. Chu Luiyue leaned back lazily in her chair with a slight smile. Senior Tan Tai's question is interesting. This is a matter of the Dark North royal family. No matter how I look at it, it doesn't seem important. I'm afraid you've asked the wrong person. As she spoke, she looked around. Jun Qiji hadn't arrived yet. It was as if he was being held back by this matter. However, Chu Luiyue didn't think that Shang Binghe would tell Jun Qiji the whole thing. Tan Taichen snorted softly. "We've been staying here for the past 2 days and haven't returned. Only you returned yesterday and this happened. Don't you think it's a coincidence?" Chu Luiyue sat up straight and looked at Tan Taichen with a faint smile. "So, Senior Tan Tai, you think this matter has something to do with me?" "I didn't say that." "Isn't that what you mean?" "Now that you've said it, everyone listen up. None of us here are fools. Don't tell me you still expect me to help you investigate this matter?" Chu Luiyue seemed to be joking, but her words were very straightforward. Tan Taichen didn't expect her to be so rude and was a little embarrassed. Chu Luiyue was getting more and more difficult to deal with because of her background. She was still polite before, but now she didn't care about his feelings at all. Tan Taichen didn't think about it. They had bullied her time and time again. No one could endure it forever. Besides, Chu Luiyue wasn't someone who liked to be taken advantage of. She would definitely get back what others owed her. Therefore, she didn't want to be perfunctory with him now. "I'm just asking casually. Why are you so agitated?" Tan Taichen's tone turned cold. Chu Luiyue smiled. "If I also doubt the Taiyu dynasty, I wonder if you can still smile at me?" "You." The atmosphere in the room suddenly froze. Jun Qiji wasn't here, so there was no one who could keep her in check. Gong Sun Shao glanced over but didn't say anything. As for Ning Yuan, he didn't seem to care about these arguments from the beginning. He just looked at the colorful boundary and waited patiently. Tan Taichen couldn't win against Chu Luiyue. In front of so many people, he couldn't say anything more. Even if he won the argument, it was just a momentary slip of the tongue. In the blink of an eye, people might secretly point out that he was bullying the young. If he lost the argument, he would lose even more face. He simply shut his mouth and no longer looked at Chu Luiyue. As long as Ruoli and the others could defeat the Tianling dynasty in the ancient Phoenix Mountains, nothing else mattered. Finally having some peace and quiet, Chu Luiyue rubbed her temples. In reality, she was far from being as carefree as she appeared on the surface. On one hand, she was worried about her father's situation. On the other hand, Jian Fengqi and the others had entered the ancient Phoenix Mountain, and things didn't seem optimistic. This Jinlingzi was originally given to them as a precaution. After all, no one knew what was going on in the ancient Phoenix Mountain, which hadn't been opened for 1,000 years, and what dangers they would encounter. She didn't expect that in such a short period of time, 3 people would be in trouble. Unfortunately, with this boundary in the way, she couldn't find out what was going on inside. If everyone had encountered such danger, it would be pardonable. But if it was just them, then it would be dangerous. Time passed slowly. When it was evening again, Jun Qiji didn't appear. She didn't know if he was busy dealing with the affairs of the imperial court or the affairs of the Eastern Palace. Chu Luiyue didn't need to think to know that there must be undercurrents surging in Linzhou City at this time. However, she stayed at the foot of the ancient Phoenix Mountain, so she wouldn't be affected. From another point of view, this was also a way to hide one's identity. At that time, because she was in too much of a hurry, she didn't restore the mechanism of the bookshelf to its original state. It would inevitably lead to a large-scale and strict search. Of course, she didn't take back that strange mirror. That mirror had an obvious special aura, and if she carried it with her, it would only be quickly found by the other party. She still had to go to that study room again. But obviously, it couldn't be in these 2 days. Chu Luiyue held her breath and began to cultivate while waiting. Although this place was outside the boundary, because it was also at the edge of the ancient Phoenix Mountain, the origin power density was very rich. In fact, after she broke through to the peak of the 6th rank last time, she clearly felt that the power in her body was not completely exhausted. Instead, it was still very abundant. In other words, when she broke through to the peak of the 6th rank, she actually faintly touched the threshold of the 7th rank warrior. She didn't know if it was because she had sparred with Rong Xiu for a long time, but now she understood her strengths and weaknesses better. Naturally, it was easier for her to find a breakthrough point. As the origin power in her body continued to accumulate, the distance between her and the barrier was getting closer and closer. Just like that, 2 days passed. In the middle, Jun Qiji came once, but left in a hurry. And because Chu Luiyue had been cultivating all this time, she didn't go back again. Most people didn't care too much about Chu Luiyue's cultivation. In their opinion, no matter how hard Chu Luiyue worked, it was not worth mentioning compared to entering the ancient Phoenix Mountain. Since she took the initiative to give up this opportunity, then she couldn't blame anyone. Without anyone to disturb her, Chu Luiyue cultivated in peace and tried to get closer to the next level of the ladder bit by bit. It was the morning of the 6th day. Chu Luiyue finished the last cycle, finally opened her eyes, and slowly exhaled. Her eyes seemed to be brighter, and the aura on her body seemed to have strengthened. Then, she looked up at the colorful boundary. Suddenly, on her wrist, the Jin Lingzi vibrated twice. Chu Luiyue was shocked and suddenly stood up. It was Jian Fengqi and Cheng Wanzhou who had crushed their respective Jin Lingzi. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 959. At this point, the 5 Jin Lingzi had all shattered. This meant that Jian Fengqi and the other 4 who had entered the ancient Phoenix Mountain were all in danger. Logically speaking, when there was no way out, the ancient Phoenix Mountain would take the initiative to eliminate them. But until now, not a single person had come out. Chu Luiyue's gaze was fixed on the rainbow barrier. It was calm and peaceful, as if nothing had happened. But this made her even more worried. Sensing Chu Luiyue's movements, the few people who were waiting at the side all looked over. That girl's expression was cold and her eyes flashed with a cold light. The few of them looked at each other. What was going on? Looking at her expression, could it be that something had happened inside? Tan Taichen thought so in his heart. He narrowed his eyes and an imperceptible cold smile flashed past his lips. No matter how great this Chu Luiyue's ability was, she was powerless now. This time, let's see how arrogant she can be. At this moment, Chu Luiyue suddenly walked forward and stopped 10 steps away from the rainbow barrier. She raised her eyes and looked at Elder Huaqian who was standing in the middle. Elders, please help me. I want to enter the ancient Phoenix Mountain. Dead silence. Chu Luiyue's words were like a sudden clap of thunder, causing everyone to be stunned. Even Elder Huaqian, who was used to all kinds of big scenes, was stunned for a moment. Then, he frowned. Shengguanyu, do you know what you are saying? Because he was a top expert, his status had long surpassed ordinary elders. Even Jun Qiji had to show him some respect. Therefore, he was completely qualified to talk to Chu Luiyue with such an attitude and tone. Chu Luiyue nodded firmly. This junior knows. This ancient Phoenix Mountain only opens once every 1,000 years. The strength of the barrier is simply unimaginable. Even a few days ago, when it was at its weakest, all the elders worked together to barely open it. And now, you have already missed the best time to enter. Elder Hua Qian shook his head, directly rejecting. You'd better give up on such thoughts. Chu Luiyue clenched his fists and frowned. This junior is aware of what you've just said. But now, this junior has no choice but to enter. Elders, please help me. Elder Hua Qian stared at her. His aged eyes seemed to have seen through everything, yet they were cold and indifferent. You want to go in because the people inside are in danger, right? If that's really the reason, then you don't have to say anything. Entering the ancient Phoenix Mountain was already fraught with danger. If one wanted to obtain benefits and opportunities that ordinary people could not obtain, then one must have the courage to withstand the corresponding danger and pressure. Let's not talk about how difficult it is to open this barrier. Even if it is forcefully opened and you go in, what about the others? Do you want me to go in with you? Since it was a competition, it had to be fair. These principles had to be understood from the very beginning. Chu Luiyue clenched his fists even tighter in his sleeves, his knuckles turning white. She naturally understood what Elder Hua Qian said. But the crucial point was that the situation of Jian Fengqi and the others was obviously not normal. The ancient Phoenix Mountain was the sacred mountain of the Dark North Empire. It was the place where the experts of the deity realm broke through. Even if there was a certain amount of danger, it was not possible to force these people into a dead end in just a few days. Either there was something strange about the ancient Phoenix Mountain, or someone was secretly targeting them. But no matter which it was, there was no time to delay. Could it be that she had to wait outside helplessly? Seeing the unwillingness in Chu Luiyue's eyes, Elder Hua Qian shook his head. As for the result, everything will naturally be revealed after 9 days. 9 days? She could not wait for a day. Originally, she had left the Jin Lingzi to them because she was worried about their safety. It was fine if 1 or 2 were crushed, but now all 5 were crushed. She had to go in today. So Elder Hua Qian is not willing to help? Chu Luiyue's voice was cold as she asked word by word. Elder Hua Qian frowned. This Chu Luiyue, why was her temper so stubborn? Anger immediately rose in his heart, and he said, "That's right. Since you want to go in, it is not that there is no way. As long as you can open the barrier of the ancient Phoenix Mountain yourself, you can go in and out. At that time, we will definitely not stop you." Everyone had different expressions. Wasn't this blocking Chu Luiyue's path? Including Elder Hua Qian, this barrier was finally opened by the combined efforts of a total of 25 peak experts from various empires. Letting Chu Luiyue come alone, how could she do it? This was clearly a rejection of her request. After hearing this, Chu Luiyue stood on the spot and did not speak for a long time. Her eyes were obscure. Ning Yuan, who did not seem to care about other things, turned his gaze and said, "Everyone has their own lives. Elder Hua Qian is right. Since they have entered, they must be prepared to bear everything. Don't tell me you still want to protect them? How could there be such logic in this world?" Moreover, she was still a child herself. Even if she was worried and apprehensive, she should consider the actual situation. Wanting to force their way into the ancient Phoenix Mountain at this time was too absurd. Gong Sun Zhao's eyes turned, but he did not say anything and only watched from the sidelines. On the other hand, Tan Taichen could not hold back and laughed, as if he was mocking and ridiculing. You didn't go in when you could, and now you want to force your way in. Could it be that this ancient Phoenix Mountain is under your command, and everything has to listen to you? Such willful and reckless behavior was truly laughable. What did she think this ancient Phoenix Mountain was? How could it allow her to behave so atrociously? In this world, the strong are respected. Some people want something that does not belong to them, so they naturally have to pay the price. Those people from the Tianling dynasty, their overall strength seemed to be the weakest among these people, right? How could they not fail like this? Heh. Chu Luiyue turned around, her gaze as cold as ice as she stared at Tan Taichen. Price? Seems like Emperor Huairan seems to know something. Tan Taichen's expression stiffened for a moment, but quickly returned to normal. We don't know anything else. We only know that the winner is the king, and the loser is the bandit. Those who do not have the strength should not have come out to make a fool of themselves. This was a blatant mockery. Everyone present could not help but look at Chu Luiyue. Anyone who heard this would not be able to hold back their anger. However, Chu Luiyue's expression was so calm that it was frightening. Even the corners of her lips were slightly curled up, forming a smile. However, the smile did not reach her eyes, causing people to unconsciously feel a chill in their hearts. Emperor Huairan's words are reasonable. In this world, only the strong have the right to speak. She turned around and looked at Elder Huaqian. Elder Huaqian's heart suddenly jumped. A strong sense of uneasiness welled up. Chu Luiyue tilted her head. Elder Huaqian, you just said that as long as I open this barrier, I can do whatever I want, right? Elder Huaqian frowned, but still nodded. That's right. Good. Chu Luiyue shouted. Then today, I will open this barrier. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 960. Everyone thought that Chu Luiyue had gone crazy. She was going to open the barrier? She must be dreaming. After a short silence, Tan Taichen laughed out loud. Ha! Looks like Emperor Yuan she is planning to let us all have an eye-opener. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Chu Luiyue did not care about his mockery at all. Her elegant and noble face was cold and stern. The next moment, she suddenly raised her hand. Long Yuan sword. In an instant, the wind howled. A powerful aura gathered from all directions. A long black sword appeared in her hand. The black sword was dark and dull. It was simple and majestic. There was only a very thin silver groove in the middle of the sword. The moment it appeared, the surrounding light seemed to be swallowed up by it. The powerful aura was frightening. Chu Luiyue flipped her wrist. Roar! In an instant, there seemed to be the roar of a dragon. It was majestic. The aura was shocking. Everyone's expression changed. That was a divine artifact. Could this be the Long Yuan sword that the Taizu of the Tianling dynasty personally forged? Shocked discussions could be heard from the crowd. It must be. Is there a second Long Yuan sword in the world? By the way, I heard that Shang Guanyu was able to ascend to the throne because of this Long Yuan sword. This is a real divine artifact. The moment he saw the Long Yuan sword, the smile on Tan Taichen's face suddenly froze. The curve of his lips became very forced. However, he immediately snorted. So what if you have a divine artifact? We don't believe that a mere peak tier 6 can really split open this enchantment. The power of a divine artifact was closely related to the strength of its owner. If it was a powerful person, it would be fine. However, if it was not powerful enough, it would be difficult to withstand the pressure of the divine artifact. Not to mention others. In Tan Taichen's opinion, Chu Luiyue's Long Yuan sword was useless. Gong Sun Xiao, Ning Yuan, and the others obviously thought so too. Their expressions were not optimistic. She is still young after all, Gong Sun Xiao chuckled and murmured. Ning Yuan did not say anything. However, when his gaze swept across the Long Yuan sword, he paused for a moment. Chu Luiyue turned a deaf ear to the discussions around her. Taizu, I have to trouble you again. She said in her heart. Taizu laughed. It's just a barrier. What trouble? Girl, just watch. Shortly after, an extremely powerful aura suddenly surged out from the Long Yuan sword. What? When Tan Taichen and the others sensed this unusual power, they were all shocked. Even Elder Hua's eyelids to this aura, it was actually several times stronger than him. This was obviously open for me. At this moment, Chu Luiyue held the long yuan sword with both hands. She raised it up high and slashed it down heavily. A black light blade flew out rapidly. Swoosh! The void was instantly cut open. A huge black space crack appeared and countless turbulent currents surged. In the blink of an eye, the black light blade had already flown above the colorful barrier. Buzz! As if it felt the threat, the barrier suddenly fluctuated rapidly. At the same time, it roared. The two forces began to fight. They were actually evenly matched. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. However, to Chu Luiyue, it was still not enough. She had to find a way to gain the upper hand and break this barrier as soon as possible. Thinking of this, she moved her mind. On top of the long yuan sword, a red flame instantly burned. Boom! A fireball flew out rapidly. It collided with the two forces that were in a stalemate. Crack! With a crisp sound, a crack appeared on the colorful barrier. Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up. However, in the next moment, the forces from the side surged over and quickly repaired the crack. When Tan Taichen and the others saw this scene, they all inexplicably heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it did not break. If Chu Luiyue really broke the barrier and broke in, where would they put their faces? Even so, it was already very shocking that she could shake it and create a crack. Tai Zu's voice was a little more serious. This barrier has existed for thousands of years and has been nourished by the power of the ancient Phoenix Mountain. It is not that easy to break. If you want to enter, you have to directly cut it open. Just a crack is definitely not enough. Chu Luiyue nodded. Yue knows. Immediately, she held her breath and concentrated, once again urging the force in her body. In her dantian, the water droplet quickly rotated. Then, an even stronger force than before condensed on top of the long yuan sword. A silver dragon-like bolt of lightning flashed across the long yuan sword. That is the power of Tianlei. Gongsun Shao finally could not hold it in. He stood up in shock and stared at Chu Luiyue with his eyes wide open. Wasn't she only at the peak of rank 6? How could she display such power? Generally speaking, only experts of rank 7 and above could achieve such a realm. Gongsun Shao and the others did not know that the pressure of Tianlei was nothing to her. After all, when she was forging the Cloud Sky Copper Sword, Tianlei did not come down for a long time, and she was the one who forcefully caught it. The long yuan sword recognized her as its master, so everything was naturally under her control. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath, and with a stern expression, she slashed the second time. Seeing that Chu Luiyue had not given up, Tan Taichen could not help but sneer. What a fool! Before he could finish his sentence, it was as if someone had suddenly grabbed his throat, and his voice stopped abruptly. The others in the field all had faces of disbelief at this time. In the middle of the colorful barrier, there was actually a hole that had been forcefully split open. There was no sound at all. When this sword landed, it actually split open the barrier without a sound. Looking carefully, one could see that the edge of the barrier that was torn open was burning with red flames. It seemed that it was because of the deterrence of this layer of flames that caused the colorful barrier to be unable to recover. Instead, the tear became bigger and bigger. Elder Hua Qian and the others who were standing nearby felt it the most. Almost at the same time that the long yuan sword landed, the barrier was silently shattered. Even the pressure on their bodies was immediately reduced by a lot. Everyone was speechless as they looked at the lady in red standing there in shock. Her figure was slender and tall, her hair like clouds, and her clothes fluttered in the wind. She held a black longsword in her hand, and the flames were burning brightly. She was like a god of war who had killed her way out from the flames of hell. At this moment, the pressure around her body was heavy, and it actually caused people to unconsciously submit to her. Chu Luiyue looked at the torn opening and heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. She turned around, and her gaze landed on Tan Taichen. Her lips curled into a smile, and she was unbridled. Didn't Emperor Huiran say that he wanted this empress to help him open his eyes? Then just now, did you look carefully? Tan Tai-Chen almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 961. Chu Luiyue weighed the long yuan sword in her hand and smiled leisurely. However, I've always been generous. Emperor Huiran, you don't have to thank me. Thank me? Thank my ass. Tan Tai-Chen's chest hurt, and he was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. But now that the barrier was opened, he couldn't even refute. Who would have thought that Chu Luiyue would actually do it? Not only Tan Tai-Chen, but everyone present was also shocked. This barrier could only be opened with the help of so many experts. How could it be so easy for Chu Luiyue? Even if her talent and strength were heaven-defying, shouldn't she be more reasonable? How was he going to let others live? With the help of that Taizu from the Tianling dynasty. No wonder you're so confident. Ning Yuan spoke in a low voice, but he was looking at the long yuan sword. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. She wasn't surprised that Ning Yuan could guess this. Because she didn't plan to hide it from him from the start. From the first attempt, Taizu had already made a move. Anyone who observed carefully would have noticed it. Taizu? Gongsun Xiao was stunned for a moment, then quickly reacted. The one who's half a step into the realm of the gods. Yes. Wasn't there a rumor that Shang Guanyu had returned with a new body? At first, it wasn't accepted, but later on, with the help of the Tianling Taizu, the problem was solved. That person seemed to have died a long time ago, but in reality, there was still a soul left. But even if it was just a soul, it was much stronger than an ordinary person to deal with this barrier. After all, it was the person closest to that legendary realm. Elder Hua Qian and the others also realized this point, and their expressions were complicated. No wonder, with that person's help, it wasn't surprising that Chu Luiyue dared to be so arrogant and even split open the barrier. Tan Tai-Chen suddenly felt a lingering fear. The Tianling Taizu? Wouldn't that be like a demigod? If she had asked for that person's help before. Tan Tai-Chen suddenly felt uneasy. If that Shang Guanyu knew what they did, at this moment, he suddenly realized that this woman was indeed not easy to provoke. After thinking about it, he kept his mouth shut. It seems that they all thought that you were able to open the barrier because of my help, Great Ancestor's voice came faintly. I really don't know how they would look if they knew that I was actually the one who was actually the one who was the one who did all the work. He had indeed exerted a great deal of strength in the first sword strike, but at that time, he had only managed to draw with the rainbow-colored barrier. After all, he's his cultivation level, he was to Taizu was. However, most of the strength of the second sword came from the water droplet in Chu Luiyue's dantian. It could be said to it's too. The moment the long yuan sword, which had been infused with this power, clashed with the barrier, it easily crushed it. Even though Taizu already knew that this thing wasn't simple, he was still shocked. Chu Luiyue laughed in his heart. It's just luck. This trump card was still quite useful sometimes. Taizu didn't say anything. He didn't tell Chu Luiyue that when that power came, even he felt a trace of fear. That was a reverence that would only emerge from the depths of one's heart when facing absolute power. This last still doesn't seem to know what kind of heaven-shaking object is hidden in her body. Chu Luiyue didn't waste too much time with them. He turned around and looked at Elder Hua Qian. Elder Hua Qian, can I go in now? Elder Hua Qian's lips moved. The wrinkles on his old face seemed to have gathered even more tightly. What else could he say? The truth was right in front of him. Could he go back on his words? Finally, he nodded with difficulty. This old man always keeps his words. You, just go in. Chu Luiyue smiled. Thank you very much. With that, she took a step forward and was about to enter. Wait. Gongsun Zhao's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Luiyue paused and looked back. Gongsun Xiao was startled by her cold gaze. He subconsciously looked away and laughed. This. Shangguanyu, look, this is a competition after all. If you go in like this, wouldn't it be unfair to the others? Chu Luiyue already knew what he wanted to say. She raised her eyebrows slightly. Oh. Then what should we do according to Elder Gongsun's suggestion? Gongsun Xiao coughed. Actually, he also felt a little embarrassed, but there was no other way around it. Look, since you're going in, then, we'll each send one person in. How about it? This time, we can send 5 people in. Chu Luiyue nodded thoughtfully. You're right. If I go in alone, it'll be quite boring. This time, even Tan Taichen and the others looked over. Chu Luiyue touched her chin and smiled brightly. Then, why don't I close this spirit formation first, and then I ask everyone to send people to open this spirit formation and enter it? To be fair, I can wait for a while. What? How can that be? Gongsun Xiao instinctively refuted. Didn't you open the barrier? Why? Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. You know that I'm the one who opened the barrier? Then what right do you have to bargain with me? Gongsun Xiao suddenly realized something and shut his mouth with a pale face. There was dead silence in the hall. Chu Luiyue looked around. I'm sorry. I don't like to owe others, but I hate it when others owe me. You want to take advantage of me? Are you daydreaming? This time, the surroundings finally quieted down. She turned around and was about to go forward when she suddenly remembered something. She tilted her head slightly and glanced at Ning Yuan. Oh right. There's something I forgot to mention. Ning Yuan seemed to feel something and looked up. Then, he saw the beautiful and awe-inspiring woman. Her eyes were like stars, and her lips curled into a smile. I don't care about others, but I'll protect my people to the end. Digression. 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 962. Then, Chu Luiyue's figure moved, and she entered through the split entrance. When she was completely inside, she lifted her wrist and retracted the burning red flame. The opening quickly closed after losing its restraining power and returned to its original state. Sigh, Gongsun Xiao watched with his mouth agape. A hint of disappointment appeared in his eyes. He had wanted to take the opportunity to go in. He did not expect Chu Luiyue to be so ruthless. She did not give them any leeway at all. Tan Taichen snorted. Brother Gongsun, that Shangguanyu is very stingy. We can't count on her. Gongsun Zhao's expression was a little awkward. She was the one who opened the barrier. Isn't she free to do whatever she wants? Ning Yuan suddenly spoke in a cold tone. None of us stepped forward to help her just now. It's normal for her to refuse to help us. Gongsun Xiao swallowed his words. Ning Yuan was an old-fashioned man. There were many things that he could not understand. However, he was very powerful. Moreover, the East Com dynasty was second only to the Baiming dynasty. Gongsun Xiao did not want to offend him unless he had no other choice. Since things had already come to this, there was no need to argue anymore. It would save them the trouble of offending one more person. Tan Taichen felt very aggrieved when he realized that he could not pick a fight with Ning Yuan. However, like Gongsun Xiao, he did not want to face Ning Yuan head-on. Therefore, he could only swallow his anger. The place fell into silence again. However, everyone was not as calm as they appeared to be. Originally, 5 people from each dynasty had gone in. Now that Shangguanyu had gone in, there was one more person. Most importantly, her strength was clearly much stronger than what they had previously expected. Once she joined, the entire Tianling dynasty's combat power would be greatly enhanced. Tan Taichen closed his eyes. Now, he could only hope that the other people from the Tianling dynasty had all been taken care of. In that case, it would be useless even if they went to Shengguanyu. Chu Luiyue passed through the barrier and entered the ancient Phoenix Mountain. As soon as she arrived, she immediately sensed that the heaven and earth origin force here was extremely dense. It was almost 3 times more than the outside world. As far as the eye could see, the mountain ranges rose and fell, tall and straight, and a long green river meandered through the mountains. It was truly a beautiful place with verdant hills and limpid waters. The scenery was pleasant. Other than that, he could also faintly hear the crisp chirping of birds coming from the forest, or occasionally see the silhouettes of magical beasts scurrying past. In short, no matter how one looked at it, it was a wonderful scene full of vitality. The ancient Phoenix Mountain was indeed worthy of being worshipped as a divine mountain by the Dark North Empire. Such a cultivation environment was indeed extremely rare. However, Chu Luiyue wasn't in the mood to appreciate these things. She raised her wrist, glanced at Jean Lingzi, and began to search for their auras. Then, she realized that Jean Lingzi was pointing in 2 different directions. This meant that the 5 of them were actually separated. Chu Luiyue was even more worried, and his brows were tightly knitted together. Before coming in, she had already told them that if possible, they must move together. Now that all 5 Jean Lingzi had shattered, they were scattered in 2 different directions. The situation was probably worse than she had expected. If she guessed correctly, Jian Fengqi and Cheng Wanzhou were on the left, and Mu Hongyu and the other 2 were on the right. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment, then chose the right direction. Besides the Jean Lingzi, Cheng Wanzhou also had the whistle that Master had given him. He hadn't blown it yet, which meant that there was still a chance. Moreover, he and Jian Fengqi weren't weak, so Chu Luiyue was slightly relieved. The situation of Mu Hongyu and the other 2 was perhaps even worse. Then, Chu Luiyue shouted. Dumpling. Whoosh, a red figure slowly appeared in front of her. Huge wings spread out, and the pressure was overwhelming. Chu Luiyue leaped and jumped onto Dumpling's back. Let's go. At a pile of rocks in ancient Phoenix Mountain. Mu Hongyu and the other 2 were hiding behind a huge rock to rest. Although it was called a rest, it wasn't that relaxing. Because the 3 of them were in terrible condition at this time. Wu Ming was seriously injured and unconscious, Yuan Jinghong was covered in blood, and Mu Hongyu was the least injured, and this was thanks to her special physique that allowed her to dodge quickly. Otherwise, she would be almost the same as Wu Ming. Do you still have the pills from before? Mu Hongyu wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and asked. Yuan Jinghong leaned against the rock and shook his head with a pale face. No, no more. Before coming, I only prepared so many, they've all been used up. Mu Hongyu bit her lip. But Wu Ming can't hold on any longer. If it weren't for the 2 of them, Wu Ming wouldn't have been so seriously injured. For the past few days, they had been using pills to keep him alive, but now the pills were gone. And the 2 of them, neither of them was a celestial physician, so they could only watch as his breath became weaker and weaker. For the 2 of them, this was no different from torture. Yuan Jinghong laughed bitterly, his face full of helplessness and despair. The 3 of us have crushed the Jean Lingzi one after another, but until now, the 2 of them haven't come. They must have encountered some problems themselves, because the 3 of them crushed the Jean Lingzi first. They didn't know the situation on Jian Fengqi's side. They also didn't know that the 2 of them had already crushed the Jean Lingzi. These words made the 2 of them fall into silence. If no one came, Wu Ming's body wouldn't be able to hold on for long, and the 2 of them might not be any better. How long have we been here? It's only been 6 days, right? Mu Hongyu suddenly opened her mouth and muttered in a daze. If only Lu Yu was here, if she was here, she would definitely have a way. Yuan Jinghong laughed bitterly again. The ancient Phoenix Mountain would only open again after 9 days. How could Chu Luiyue come in from the outside? It wasn't certain if they could hold on until then. If only Lu Yu was here, she would definitely be able to take care of those people. Mu Hongyu's heart was filled with anger and unwillingness as she said this. Oh, who are you talking about? Suddenly, a contemptuous laugh was heard. Mu Hongyu and Yuan Jinghong were both shocked and raised their heads. They saw a group of people walking out of the forest not far in front of them. It was Tantai Ruoli's group. After fighting for a few days and being seriously injured, Mu Hongyu and Yuan Jinghong's guard was lowered to the lowest. They only reacted when they saw the group in front of them. "You're haunting us." Mu Hongyu stood up abruptly and stood in front of them. "You've been chasing us for a few days. What are you trying to do? Didn't you say that we're going to chase after you?" Tantai Ruoli chuckled as a cold light flashed in her eyes. "I didn't realize that you have the faint Yuan body that only appears once in 1,000 years. It's a pity that you're going to be destroyed like this. If you want to blame someone, blame that Shengguan Yu of yours. You've provoked someone you shouldn't have." After she finished speaking, she flipped her palm and pushed it forward. Die. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 963. Song Song. Mu Hongyu yelled, and the golden mane bear cub appeared in front of her in an instant, charging towards the palm energy. The golden mane bear cub was almost fully grown now. It was about the same size as an adult golden mane bear, and its strength was much stronger than before. It ran step by step, and even the ground shook along with it. In the next moment, it used its body to collide head-on with that force. Bang! That force was instantly dispersed, and at the same time, Song Song's body flew out and landed heavily on the ground. Its brown fur, which glowed with a faint golden light, was stained with blood. Song Song. Mu Hongyu's heart felt like it was being squeezed tightly by something. Golden mane bear? Tantai Ruoli took a closer look and sneered. "I thought it was some high-level magical beast. Just a golden mane bear, and it dares to embarrass itself?" Mu Hongyu's eyes were red, and she gritted her teeth as she ran over. It crashed into a sharp rock, and there was a long gash on its body. It was a ghastly sight. Mu Hongyu's hands were trembling slightly. She wanted to carry Song Song, but she didn't know where to start. Yuan Jinghong limped forward, his face full of anger. "Aren't you afraid that people will find out about your despicable actions?" It was supposed to be a fair competition for the various clans to enter ancient Phoenix Mountain, but the people from Taiyu Dynasty had been chasing after them ever since they entered. It was as if they wouldn't stop until they forced them to a dead end. "You don't have to worry about that." Yuzefeng, who was standing at the side, chuckled. "As long as you stay here forever, who will know about this?" Yuan Jinghong's heart sank completely. These people were so arrogant and impudent, and they didn't even try to hide it. They were determined to kill them all. There were 5 of them, and they only had 3. One was unconscious, and the other 2 were seriously injured. How could they win? In fact, after everyone came in, they all went their separate ways. The 3 of them relied on Jin Lingzi to find each other. They originally planned to meet up with Jian Fengqi and Chang Wanzhou, but they didn't expect Sheng Yaojin to appear halfway. The 5 people from Taiyu Dynasty began to surround and attack them. It was unknown what method they used, but they all gathered together in an extremely short period of time. 5 against 3, how could they win? Thus, after a few days of fighting, the situation on their side became worse and worse. Until now, he had almost no combat power left. There was one thing he was right about: as long as they all died here, who would know what had happened here? Tantai Ruoli waved his hand impatiently. There's no need to talk nonsense with them. Just get rid of them. There were still 2 more after him. Yuzefeng smiled eagerly. Ruoli, you don't have to do anything to deal with these people. You just need to rest and watch from the side. Leave this to us. Tantai Ruoli couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. That's true. I don't want to dirty my hands. Then you guys should move faster. Don't worry. After Yuzefeng finished speaking, he took a step forward with a cold, murderous look on his face. The few people behind him also stepped forward and quickly surrounded Mu Hongyu and the other two. Such a scene was simply a hopeless situation. Yuan Jinghong glanced at Mu Hongyu and said in a low voice, "Hongyu, I'll hold them back later. You take the opportunity to escape." Mu Hongyu had the faint Yuan body. Even if she couldn't defeat them, running away was definitely not a problem. "But you, every one of you can escape." Yuan Jinghong interrupted her words and stared at her seriously. "As long as you can escape, you can identify them. The three of them couldn't die here for nothing." Mu Hongyu clenched her fists, and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. "Attack!" Yu Zifeng ordered. The few of them attacked together. Four forces flew out at the same time. There was no way to avoid it. Mu Hongyu and Yuan Jinghong were about to be killed on the spot. Yuan Jinghong quickly glanced at Mu Hongyu. Mu Hongyu's tears flowed out. The violent force around them was already closing in on them. A strong wind blew. Mu Hongyu closed her eyes tightly. She felt an unprecedented sense of despair. Just as she was about to make a move, the biting cold storm suddenly stopped. Mu Hongyu was stunned and opened her eyes. However, a red barrier had appeared in front of the three of them and blocked all the attacks. Mu Hongyu stared blankly. Then, a ridiculous and bold idea came to her mind. This aura was obviously, just at this moment, an extremely familiar voice came from the sky. "They're my people. You, try touching them again." This clear and powerful voice was clearly transmitted into the ears of everyone present. In an instant, almost everyone raised their heads and looked over. In mid-air, a red-tailed phoenix spread its wings. Its tail was burning like flames and almost covered the sky. And standing on its back was a red-clothed woman. She was beautiful and unparalleled. It was Chu Luyue. She came with an unparalleled pressure. She was high and mighty, making people feel awe. Some people were born to be kings. Chu Luyue was such a person. Tantai Ruoli and the rest were shocked when they saw the person's face. "Sheng Wanyu?" Tantai Ruoli could not believe his eyes. Wasn't the ancient Phoenix Mountains barrier sealed? Where did this Sheng Wanyu come from? The moment Mu Hongyu saw Chu Luyue, her heart calmed down. It was as if as long as she was here, all problems would be solved. She quickly wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. She could not suppress the joy and excitement in her heart. Lu Yu. She could not help but pull Yuan Jinghong. "It's her. It's really her. She really came." Yuan Jinghong hadn't reacted yet. He was at a loss. Her Majesty came personally? How did she come in? "Sheng Wanyu, you dare to sneak into ancient Phoenix Mountain. How presumptuous." Tantai Ruoli immediately scolded. This Sheng Wanyu clearly said that she would not come in, but now she appeared again. The only explanation she could think of was that Sheng Wanyu had snuck in from the beginning. It was just that she had been hiding in the dark and only showed up now. Chu Luyue chuckled and held the long yuan sword in her hand tightly. Her slender and fair fingers slowly brushed across the simple and majestic black sword. "Tantai Ruoli, I advise you to be careful with your words." This consort had openly and honorably split open the ancient Phoenix Mountains barrier to enter. "Oh, forget it. It's useless to say this to you. Anyway, you won't have the chance to go out and spout nonsense." Chu Luyue's eyes flashed with a cold light. "Since you don't like the golden mane bear, then this mythical beast should be good enough for you." Dumpling. Tear her mouth apart. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 964. Just as she finished speaking, everyone saw a blazing red flame swooping down from the sky. It went straight for Tantai Ruoli. Tantai Ruoli was shocked. Even if she was not weak, she was definitely not a match for a divine beast. She didn't even think about it as she quickly retreated with the tip of her toes. At the same time, she threw out a 3-section whip. Soul-urging whip. Smack. A crisp sound of something breaking through the air was heard. The 3-section whip was completely black, and each section was tightly connected with a silver buckle. When she swung it, she could faintly hear some kind of sharp whistling sound. Dumpling's eyes were cold and indifferent. She looked at her as if she was looking at a clown. The 3-section whip did not slow down Dumpling's speed at all. It flapped its wings and left a few afterimages in the sky. In the blink of an eye, it was already above Tantai Ruoli's head. The distance between the human and the beast was quickly shortening. Sensing that the frightening pressure was getting closer and closer, Tantai Ruoli became more and more nervous, and a deep sense of fear welled up from the bottom of her heart. She hurriedly poured even more origin power into the 3-section whip. Bang! On the tip of the 3-section whip, many sharp thorns suddenly appeared. Under the sunlight, the thorns reflected a faint blue light. It was obviously dipped in poison. Just a slight touch, Dumpling's eyes turned sharp, and it immediately swung its claws and slapped the 3-section whip away. Bang! In the next moment, the 3-section whip was hit by the force and broke into countless pieces. At the same time, the red flames swept over and burned it into ashes. From the beginning to the end, it did not pose any threat to Dumpling at all. When the 3-section whip was snatched away, Tantai Ruoli was already terrified. When she saw this scene, her face turned even paler. She almost instinctively ran backward, but just as she took a step back, there was a fireball behind her. Boom, boom, boom. Dumpling flapped its wings and several flames flew out. They quickly exploded around Tantai Ruoli. In an instant, rocks were flying everywhere, and sparks were flying everywhere. Tantai Ruoli felt as if the surrounding air was burning. The terrifying heat swept over and engulfed her. It was hard to break free. She quickly looked around, but to her despair, she found that she had nowhere to run. At this moment, she was undoubtedly meat on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Ruoli. Seeing this scene, Yuzefeng and the rest instantly panicked and wanted to rush over to save her. But just as they tried to get close, they were blown away by the terrifying heat wave. How could the power of a divine beast be so easily? In a panic, Yu quickly looked at Chu Luyue, who was standing at the side. At this moment, she was holding her sword with both hands and looking at the scene in front of her with a leisurely and indifferent expression. Shengguan Yu. Do you dare to kill us? Once you get out, the Taiyu dynasty will not let you go. Yuzefeng bellowed furiously. Chu Liyue's gaze turned slightly, and she glanced at him in a seemingly smiling manner. As long as you stay here forever, no one will know about this, right? Speaking of which, this is what you taught me just now. Yuzefeng was speechless, and the blood drained from his face. He was not stupid. He could tell that Shangguanyu was planning to get rid of them completely. She was not joking, nor was she threatening them. She was serious. At this moment, Dumpling quickly closed in and slapped Tantai Ruoli's face with her claws. Tantai Ruoli let out a short cry, and she fell to the ground, her face covered in blood. Ruoli. Princess. Yuzefeng and the rest saw this scene, and their hearts almost stopped. Tantai Ruoli couldn't care less about the pain in her body. Almost immediately, she touched her face. His hands were full of sweet and sticky blood. She could even feel the bloody scratches on her face. Especially on the left side of her mouth, there was a wound that went all the way to her cheekbone. She didn't need to look in the mirror to know how pathetic she looked now. My face. Tantai Ruoli's hand trembled, and soon, her entire body was shaking. She fell to the ground with her eyes wide open. Her face was filled with panic and despair, and she kept vomiting blood. Tuanzi's claw had not only destroyed her face, but also almost destroyed half of the power in her body. Cultivators of the same level were usually inferior to magical beasts, not to mention her, who was not even a rank 8 warrior. How could she be compared to Dumpling? It was as easy as crushing dry weeds. Tuanzi flew back to Chu Luoyue's side and obediently lowered its head. It looked at Chu Luoyue eagerly as if it was asking for praise. Chu Luoyue's lips curved up as she lightly patted Tuanzi's head. Well done. Dumpling squinted her eyes happily. Of course. It wasn't difficult to deal with such a small character. Chu Luoyue looked down at her. TSK, I only asked you to tear her mouth. Why did you destroy her entire face? That's not appropriate. Dumpling snorted. The rest was a gift. Didn't she look down on Song Song just now? She wanted to stand up for it. Chu Luoyue couldn't help but laugh. She was such a busybody. She leaped and landed lightly in front of Mu Hongyu and the rest. Lu Yu. Mu Hongyu couldn't hide her excitement and joy. She had many things to say, but she knew that this wasn't the right time. They had more important things to do. Lu Yu, quickly take a look at Wu Ming. He's been unconscious for a few days. When Yuan Jinghong heard this, he also hurriedly agreed. The two of them could still hold on, but Wu Ming couldn't be delayed any longer. Don't worry. Chu Luoyue nodded and walked quickly to Wu Ming's side. She first took his pulse and then frowned. Mu Hongyu and Yuan Jinghong's hearts jumped when they saw Chu Luoyue's expression. Lu Yu, how is he? Mu Hongyu asked worriedly. Chu Luoyue took out a pill and fed it to Wu Ming. Then, she looked at the other side calmly. At this moment, Tantai Ruoli was kneeling on the ground on the verge of death. Yuzefeng and the rest finally managed to bypass the burning flames with great difficulty and rushed to her side. Princess, how are you? They were shocked when they saw Tantai Ruoli's terrible condition. Yuzefeng quickly hugged her, shocked and angry. Quick! Get the medicine. Oh. Yes. Medicine. We've already prepared for this. When the people beside him heard this, they hurriedly rummaged through it. Don't waste your energy. Chu Luoyue said calmly. She gestured for Yuan Jinghong to take care of Wu Ming before she got up. There's no other medicine that can cure the injuries caused by the red-tailed phoenix except for the blood of a mythical beast. Yuzefeng and the rest were shocked when they heard this. You. Shengguan Yu. I didn't expect you to be so vicious. Chu Luoyue ignored them. She thought about the injuries on Wu Ming and the other two and a murderous look appeared in her eyes. She raised her eyes slightly to look at Tuanzi and said calmly, don't leave a single one alive. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 965. Screech, a clear screech reverberated through the air. Dumpling's figure flashed, and two balls of red flames flew out rapidly. Boom boom boom. The few of them were already gathered together, so it was much more convenient for them to attack now. After a series of earth-shattering explosions, the few of them were once again set ablaze with ferocious flames. It even formed a huge semicircular barrier, trapping all of them within. They were going to burn them alive. Sensing the danger, Yuzefeng and the rest panicked. Shengguan Yu. How dare you? Chu Luoyue raised her eyebrows slightly. Whether I dare or not, didn't you see it clearly for yourselves? The flames were already right in front of them, but they were still shouting uselessly. These people from the Taiyu dynasty were indeed only capable of this much. Actually, Chu Luoyue didn't want to kill them at first, but after arriving here, she realized that Wu Ming and the rest were severely injured, especially Wu Ming. If she had arrived any later, the three of them would have lost their lives here. The other party had surrounded them first and forced them to a dead end without caring about anything else, and they weren't even allowed to retaliate? There was no such logic anywhere in the world. Yuzefeng was choked speechless. At this moment, Tantai Ruoli moaned in pain again. She looked like she would rather die than live. The most shocking thing was that the injuries on her face and body seemed to be festering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Our medicine is really useless." A man next to him shouted in panic. He had clearly fed her medicine just now, but unexpectedly, Tantai Ruoli's injuries didn't improve at all. Instead, they worsened. Yusufeng clenched his fists, and the veins on his forehead popped out. It seemed that Shangguanyu wasn't lying. Injuries caused by a divine beast really couldn't be healed by ordinary medicine. Tantai Ruoli curled up into a ball, almost fainting from the pain. At this moment, she didn't even have the strength to glare at Chu Luyue. How many people could withstand the fatal blow of a mythological beast? Right at this moment, the body of another person next to him was stained with a few sparks, which then quickly burned up. He hurriedly tried to extinguish the flames on his body, but was shocked to find that ordinary methods were useless against the flames. Time passed quickly. They were trapped in the flame cage. It was as if they had fallen into hell. They had no way to break free. "Zifeng, what do we do now?" Now that Tantai Ruoli was seriously injured, he could only listen to Yuzifeng. But what could Yuzifeng do? There was no use in threatening them. Shangguanyu was determined to take their lives. Beg for mercy? He was afraid that he would die even faster. Chu Luyue rarely went on a killing spree like this. However, since the other party had already bullied him, there was no need for him to endure any longer. What's more, the ancient Phoenix Mountains environment was sealed off. Was there anything more suitable than closing the door and beating the dog? Cough, cough. Wu Ming, who had been unconscious for a long time, suddenly coughed. Yuan Jinghong was surprised and happy at the same time. "Wu Ming, you're awake." Wu Ming slowly opened his eyes. Because of the dazzling sunlight, he closed his eyes again. After a while, he finally adapted to his surroundings and gradually saw the scene in front of him. Startled, Wu Ming still didn't understand what was going on. When he saw Yuan Jinghong's haggard and blood-stained face, his heart skipped a beat. "Run! Run!" Yuan Jinghong hurriedly said. "Don't worry, His Majesty is here to save us." Wu Ming was stunned for a while. He turned his head with difficulty and saw the familiar figure of a woman not far away. Further away, there seemed to be a few people trapped in a raging fire. He could vaguely hear hysterical screams. That sounded like, "They're from the Taiyu dynasty," Yuan Jinghong explained. Wu Ming was even more confused. What was going on? At this time, Chu Luyue also turned around and smiled faintly at Wu Ming. "Your internal organs are injured and your vitality is greatly damaged. You need to recuperate. Don't worry about these things. I will take care of it." Wu Ming didn't have time to ask Chu Luyue how he appeared in this ancient Phoenix Mountain. He said with difficulty, "Your Majesty, those people. There's something on them." Chu Luyue frowned slightly. "What is it?" Wu Ming shook his head. His face was even paler. They seem to be able to communicate with each other, and outside, although his breath was weak and he was stammering, Chu Luyue instantly understood. "You mean, there's something on them that allows them to communicate with each other, and Tan Taichen outside can also know?" Wu Ming nodded vigorously. Mu Hongyu suddenly thought of something. "I see. It's because of this that they can gather together so quickly." They had Jean Lingzi. They thought that the gathering speed was already very fast, but the people of Taiyu dynasty were even faster. This was indeed abnormal. Yuan Jinghong was suddenly shocked and looked at Chu Luyue. "Your Majesty, if that's the case, then if we kill them, won't the people outside know immediately? His Majesty just came in, and the people of Taiyu dynasty were killed." This was strange no matter how one looked at it. Chu Luyue's eyes moved slightly. In fact, this was nothing. Everything was based on evidence. If there was no evidence, even if Tan Taichen was sure that it was her, he couldn't do anything. The key was, she didn't know what they used, and whether they left any clues. Chu Luyue turned around. Tuanzi had a telepathic connection with her and immediately stopped. However, the layer of flame barrier outside was not removed. At this time, the few people in the fire had fallen into deep despair. Zifeng, the princess, fainted. What should we do now? This fire is very powerful. We can't rush out at all. Are we really going to wait for death here? Zifeng gritted his teeth. Even if we die, we can't let Shengguan Yu get away with it. This debt must be placed on her head. His mind raced. Then, he seemed to have made up his mind. No matter what, we have to pass this news to His Majesty. As long as the people outside knew that Shengguan Yu was behind this, they would be in deep trouble even if they escaped. When the people beside him heard this, they looked at each other and nodded vigorously. Zifeng closed his eyes and extended his hand with his palm facing up. A moment later, a strange rune appeared in the middle of his palm. The others did the same one after another. Other than the unconscious Tantai Ruoli and the half-dead young man, Zifeng and the other two were left. Black runes appeared in the hands of the three of them. Soon, the runes in their hands floated up and gathered in the middle to form a new rune the size of a palm. However, this rune seemed to be missing two pieces and looked incomplete. So, this is what you rely on. Just as the three of them were about to activate the rune, Chu Liuyue's lazy voice suddenly rang out. The few of them were shocked. When they looked up, they saw that the fire in front of them had split in the middle. Chu Liuyue was standing not far away. She was looking at them with a faint smile. She fixed her gaze on the rune and narrowed her eyes dangerously. Why does this thing look so familiar? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 966. Almost instantly, Chu Liuyue recognized the black rune. Wasn't this the same rune that was formed by the soul that was hiding in Shengguan Wan's body? Although this rune was missing two pieces, it could still be recognized at a glance. Her lips curled into a cold smile. I didn't expect you to be related to the Black Demon Cave. What Black Demon Cave? What nonsense are you talking about? Zifeng immediately retorted. However, he felt a little weak in his heart. Shengguan Yu. Why did she seem to know what this was? Back then, His Majesty took out this rune and divided it into 5 parts, which were hidden in their bodies. At that time, he only said that this was a precious item that he had found, which could be used to communicate with each other in ancient Phoenix Mountain. If anything happened, it could also send out an alarm. Furthermore, every single rune contained an extremely powerful force that could be used to protect oneself. Zifeng remembered clearly that His Majesty had once said that this item had a great origin and that ordinary people would not be able to recognize it. However, at the same time, he also cautioned that unless it was absolutely necessary, they should not gather the rune. According to His Majesty, it was impossible for others to recognize this item. However, Shengguan Yu only took a glance at it. How did she recognize it? The expression on her face did not seem to be lying. You don't want to admit it? Chu Liuyue sneered, but the corners of her eyes were cold. She really didn't expect that she would encounter something related to the Black Demon Cave here. Even if Zifeng and the others did not know what was going on, Tan Taichen definitely knew. She really could not tell that this old fox had such a trick up his sleeve. Chu Liuyue held the Dragon Abyss sword tightly, raised it high, and slashed it directly. Roar! In an instant, it was as if a dragon's roar resounded through heaven and earth. Fear appeared in the eyes of Zifeng and the others. Quick! Hurry up and activate the rune. Zifeng hurriedly shouted. Even if the rune was not neatly assembled, it would still be slightly useful if it was activated now. The few of them hurriedly activated the force in their bodies. Black flames burned at the edge of the black rune. A cold and gloomy aura spread out from it. Just as he finished speaking, a piercingly cold sword chi suddenly flew over. Chi! A teeth-numbing cracking sound rang out. The rune that had just been put together was directly split into 2 by the Long Yuan sword. Boom! The 2 forces collided fiercely, forming a terrifying turbulence that swept out in all directions. Gravel flew everywhere, and the ground caved in. Chu Luiyue flicked his wrist and thousands of sword chi flew out from the long yuan sword. Direct strangulation. Yuzefeng had just shouted out a single word when a bloody hole appeared on his neck. His eyes widened. Blood gushed out of the wound and soon dyed the front of his clothes red. Then, his body stiffened and he collapsed completely. The two people beside him wanted to save him, but they couldn't even take care of themselves. Soon, two cries of pain could be heard as the two of them collapsed one after the other. As for the black flame on the black rune, it was silently extinguished before completely dissipating. Dumpling flapped its wings. Strong winds blew everywhere. Red flames swept over and completely engulfed the few people. Not long after, the few people were completely turned into ashes in the flames and dissipated with the wind. Almost at the same time, Tan Taichen, who was waiting outside the barrier, suddenly stood up. His eyes widened in shock. His lips were pale and his back was covered in cold sweat. That was, he looked at his palm in disbelief. A faint rune appeared, but before it could fully appear, it dissipated with a loud bang. Tan Taichen seemed to have been struck by lightning. His vision turned black and his legs went soft. He staggered a few steps and almost fell to the ground. Brother Tan Tai, what happened to you? Gongsun Xiao and Ning Yuan noticed the situation and immediately looked over. Seeing Tan Taichen's expression, they realized that something must have happened. Tan Taichen seemed to have not heard anything and was completely stunned. 5 people were all dead. How was this possible? They were clearly, not long ago, he was still fantasizing that Ruoli and the others would be able to achieve good results this time. At that time, he would show everyone how powerful their Taiyu dynasty was. But in the blink of an eye, the 5 people were all gone. They didn't even have time to leave behind the last clue. The feeling of being pierced by thousands of arrows was nothing more than this. Tan Taichen's eyes were bloodshot. As if he had gone mad, he suddenly charged toward the colorful barrier. Elder Hua Qian frowned and waved his sleeve to stop him. Tan Taichen, what are you doing? Are you going to force your way into the ancient Phoenix Mountain like Shangguanyu? Hearing that name, Tan Taichen suddenly raised his head. His eyes were about to pop out. It's her. It must be her. Inside the barrier. The last spark was extinguished. At the original location of the few people, there were only traces left behind by the energy collision. If someone came, they would probably only think that a great battle had broken out here, but they wouldn't know who had died here. Chu Luiyue slowly put away the Dragon Abyss sword, but he was still thinking about the last scene of those people. What was the relationship between Taiyu dynasty and the Black Demon Cave? After thinking for a while, he still couldn't figure it out. He probably had to ask Tan Taichen. Chu Luiyue simply put away this thought and turned to look at Mu Hongyu and the others. Slap. 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 Before Chu Luiyue could finish speaking, a hoarse and low voice sounded in his ear. TSK, what a vicious and merciless woman. Chu Luiyue suddenly turned around. Jun Jiuqing. Digression, 6 p.m. mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.